Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a day out with Momo and Eri part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story VentesDemon from fanfiction. So let's start the video. The pain of love. Let's go home. Thunder booms overhead with bolts of lightning cutting through the sky as rain fell around Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Endeavor, Best Jeanist, and the Lurkers team comprised of 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲, 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗏𝗺, and 𝗵𝗃. This small band of heroes stood within the trees of 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐵, just outside of the mansion Lady Nagant had told them about not an hour ago. It once belonged to a hate group that calls themselves the Creature Rejection Clan, known for their cult-like hatred towards heteromorphs. The questions of how All for One found this place, or why didn't matter to Midoriya, who glares at the building with a growing frustration. He makes the first move, striding forward as Jeanist finishes notifying Hawks. "Wait, Deku. Don't be rash." He calls out as Yaoyorozu follows behind, believing the same thing. Izuku. They reach the door, throwing it open to find the interior completely empty, with no signs of anyone being here for months. "This place is deserted," 𝗵𝗃 comments, entering after Yaoyorozu with the rest of her team following suit. "I wish I could say I'm surprised." Yaoyorozu comments as they all explore the large room they were in. "Then why make this the meeting place?" 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗺𝗺 asks. "If Nagant was supposed to bury Midoriya here, then why hasn't he readied this place for it? I know it was supposed to be 2 months away, but still?" "Because," Endeavor said, spotting a disc free of dust sitting on the fireplace shelf. "This place isn't meant for that." He concludes with a growl just as the disc powers on, projecting a screen of one for all smiling at them while applauding. "Izuku Midoriya, I do hope you enjoyed your heart-to-heart with the lovely Lady Nagant. If you're seeing this, it means she relayed my instructions, and I remain one step ahead of you." He stops clapping as everyone glares at the protected screen. He goes on to talk about Lady Nagant being labeled a villain, society praising individualism, and many blatant contradictions within every political standing, making everyone there glare at the monologuing villain. Yaoyorozu, however, walks up to Midoriya and grabs his hand, momentarily easing his anger. "The path you've chosen is a thorny one. Every fight will wear at you until there's nothing left." The two of them look back at the screen with stern glares as one for all leans closer to the screen. "While I was in prison, I spent countless hours thinking about you. I'm afraid I'm not interested in All Might anymore. I've grown bored of that pitiful oaf." The two student heroes glare at the screen, clutching their hands, ready to scream at 𝗃𝗏𝗏 as his grin manages to grow even bigger. "And as for you, my dear Momo Yaoyorozu." Their eyes widen as the other prose along with the listening vestiges. "I am well aware of your lovely quirk, and the scope of its reach." The girl takes an involuntary step back, causing Midoriya to turn his back on the screen and hold her, his own body shaking with dread. "Rest assured that from now on, the hunters I've sent will also be eager to bring you to me as well. I must congratulate you both for falling into the same trap that ensnared Nana Shimura and All Might all those years ago." He points at the screen. "Which means now it's your turn." Both his danger sense and her visor flare up, giving them all enough time to escape the building before the projector exploded, reducing the mansion to rubble. Yaoyorozu stood beside All Might as they watch with worry as Midoriya instantly takes down another hired gun who had attempted to catch her and uses leverage against him. While she was prepared to repel him, Midoriya zips in, the force of it making her stumble backwards, and carries him into an abandoned building, restraining him instantly. All Might gave her a sympathetic look as Midoriya questions the villain. "Young lady." He had no useful information. They turn to see Midoriya approach them, with Yaoyorozu reaching out to him, only for the boy to sidestep her and continue forward. "It's possible he might explode as well. Be careful." He leaps away. "Wait a second," she yells, getting him to stop. "We should slow down and take a break." She all but pleads while making her way to him. "Please, Izuku. We need to conserve our strength." "She right, kid?" All Might adds, reaching her side, holding 2 boxed meals. "Let's sit in my car and have something." "Listen." Midoriya growls, stunning the 2 people behind him. "The 2 of you can't be near me anymore." Yaoyorozu gasps as he clutches his fists. I'll handle all for one alone. Absolutely not. She yells back, running towards him. That's the last thing we should. I'm fine. His sudden shout stops her in her tracks, knowing where his frustration was coming from, but still feeling hurt all the same. Really? I've got this. He finishes in a calmer manner. Now hold on just a minute. All Might finally says, having to force himself to speak up. At this point, I'm fighting at a level comparable to you at 100%, All Might. Without any backlash. Don't you two see? You're trying to protect us. Both Yaoyorozu and All Might thought at the same time. To keep me from getting caught up in your fated mission as my successor. All Might couldn't keep the moment at the sports festival, where he asked Midoriya to announce to the world, I am here. To keep me from getting captured by One for All and having my quirks stolen. Yaoyorozu grips her cape, thinking back to Nabu Island where their entire class, spearheaded by Midoriya and Bakugo, fought with everything they had to keep Nine from stealing Katsuma's cell activation quirk. Going so far as to, according to Nana Shimura and Yoichi Shigaraki, transfer One for All to Bakugo in order to do it. That's why, Midoriya continues to say, looking back at them with soft eyes shining through his ragged mask. You two don't have to worry. He turns and starts to walk away. I swore I would raise him, that I'd keep him safe. But, All Might thought as he clutched his teeth, desperate to say more. That's not the point and you know it. He looks to Yaoyorozu, having yelled out with tears threatening to fall, her voice managing to stop Midoriya again. You can't keep pushing yourself like this and expect to. Midoriya leaps into the air, using float to fly away. Damn it, Izuku. She curses. She runs after removing her glove and aiming her hand down, creating a pole to get her in the air high enough to activate her boots, only for nothing to happen. She and All Might gasp as she lands on the ground with a thud, the older man making his way to her side. Are you alright? What happened? The two of them look at her boots to see tendrils of black whip wrapped around them, keeping the compartments closed. When did he? The two of them thought back to when Midoriya had rushed past her, making her stumble. He must have done it then. The dam finally broke, causing her tears to stream down her face as she throws her head around towards Midoriya. Izuku. All Might brings her into a hug, letting her cry against his shoulder as his own sobs escape his throat. Unbeknownst to the two of them, a familiar jailbreaker, Stain stood close by, hidden behind a slab of concrete, wearing a simple mask with his tongue hanging out. Endeavor will be by shortly. This is for your safety. Yaoyorozu stood under an awning of a cafe as the rain refused to let up. It's been a few hours since Midoriya took off on his own, encountering numerous jailbreakers and hired guns since then, leaving them restrained for All Might and whatever authorities to round up, all the while remaining just out of reach from All Might and Yaoyorozu. Then, All Might receives a call from Endeavor informing the two of them that Midoriya has stopped taking his calls after telling him to regroup until the foreign heroes arrive. He also tells them that Principal Nizu has requested his presence and believes Yaoyorozu should return as well, given All for One's plain intentions towards her. All Might agreed, though she was silent throughout. Even when he dropped her off at the cafe, she didn't raise a single protest against it. The retired hero gives her a sad look. I should have done more to stop him from going off on his own. She remains silent, blankly staring at the ground, the tendrils still wrapped tightly around her boots. I'm so sorry, Yaoyorozu. Truly. For everything. With that, he rolls up the window and drives away. Yaoyorozu was in a state of grief she had never been in before. All the stories her mother told her regarding the time she spent with her father painted a much more pleasant picture of love and being with someone. It's only now she began to consider that they were hiding their rough patches from her in order to keep their daughter hopeful and happy regarding romance and relationships. But thinking back to the time she spent with Midoriya, all she feels now is a crushing guilt that her love for him and his love for her was making him desperate to put an end to the threat of One for All, ensuring he wouldn't go after her, pushing him forward towards that goal while simultaneously pushing her away in order to protect her. The irony of it brought a small smile to her face, which began a trip through her memories of them flying over the city together, stopping villains and helping citizens. The times they sat together, letting one of them rest while the other kept watch, having interesting conversations about whatever topic came to mind. their date by the fountain, the kiss on the cheek she gave him, finally professing their love for each other. Her smile vanishes as she brings her hands to her face, letting out sobs from behind them. Izuku, having removed her visor earlier to wipe her eyes of tears, the hero course student stood unaware of someone hidden to the side, watching her intently. Creeping into the dim light, Himiko Toga silently moves closer, pressing her clutched hand to her chest the closer she got. Creati. She slips back into the shadows as 𝗵𝗲𝗿 descends beside the saddened student. The flame hero stood silently as the rain sizzles against his active flames, looking at her and the miserable look on her face. Images of his wife returning to his mind. Ones of their youth, of the torment he put her through, and finally, of how strong she had become that day in his hospital room, reigniting both the shame he felt for all the wrongs he had committed as well as the affection he still held for her. Yaoyorozu. I am in no position to say this, but your dedication towards Midoriya is truly admirable. Slowly, Yaoyorozu looks up from her hands and stares at him with surprise. Despite the dangers before you, all you can think about is him. A trait the two of you share. He looks up at the clouds, clutching his fist. Had I shown even a fraction of what you two have, perhaps things wouldn't be what they are now. Toya Shoto, my family, all of Japan. Despite the rain, it was clear he was on the verge of breaking down, a sight that shook Yaoyorozu to her core. Even Toga, still watching from the shadows, couldn't help but think of 𝗵𝗿𝗺 and his desire to kill his father, wondering how much of that is actually love and desire to show 𝗵𝗵𝗻 what he can do. A light touch on his arm brings 𝗵𝗵𝗻's attention to it, seeing Yaoyorozu had placed her gloveless hand on his arm and smiling up at him. No words were spoken, just an understanding of one another and the love they have for those most precious to them. With a stern nod, 𝗵𝗵𝗻 picks up the young hero and takes off towards the direction UA High School stood. As they leave, Toga steps out of the shadows and watches them go. Yamamoe. Ever since her encounter with Ochako, the villain was desperate to see the other student again, believing her to be the only person in the world that understands her and the love she has for Midoriya. So when Shigaraki used search to locate One for All in Midoriya, he also found Yaoyorozu via her quirk. All for One immediately afterward became elated but hadn't said why, only that they spread the word to the jailbreakers to also bring in her friend as well. She asked where Yaoyorozu was and Tomura told her, albeit reluctantly as she represented the complete opposite of him, her creation and his destruction. Even when 𝗵𝗵𝗻 was out of her sight, she kept staring at the sky, gripping the vial that held Yaoyorozu's blood to her chest. I want to talk to you one more time. Before. Himiko's eyes get moist as she recalls the look of absolute loathing that swam within Tomura's eyes as he vowed to kill Yaoyorozu and her quirk. The door swings open as Bakugo, Todoroki, and Ochako lead the rest of Class A into Principal Nizu's office. While seeing 𝗵𝗵𝗻 there was expected, none of them could contain their surprise to find Yaoyorozu standing beside them. None except for Bakugo. Everyone. Yaoyorozu breaths out as the other students come into view. Principe, you set me up. 𝗵𝗵𝗻 concludes, unsure if this was a good way for them to find Yaoyorozu. I heard a request from my students and decided a group discussion would be worthwhile. He looks at Yaoyorozu. Though, I do wish you had informed me you would be bringing Yaoyorozu back with you. Todoroki, who had been meeting Yaoyorozu's stunned eyes, became upset, turning to his father. I don't understand why you've been ignoring me, he asks, getting 𝗵𝗻𝗻's attention. Didn't we just talk about how we were going to stop Toya together? Shoto, the fact that you're willing to stand at my side is why I still fight. What good is that doing us? He glances towards Yaoyorozu, who meets it without flinching. You brought Yaoyorozu back, sure. He faces 𝗵𝗵𝗻 again. But why haven't you brought Midoriya as well? Todoroki, Yaoyorozu starts to say, but he continues. Let me guess. You have him and All Might looking out for each other, right? Both 𝗵𝗻𝗻 and Yaoyorozu go silent. No, it's worse than that, isn't it? Bakugo says, looking at Yaoyorozu. He's gone rogue, hasn't he? After meeting his hard glare for a moment, she nods. That's what I was afraid of from the very start, 𝗲𝗲𝗻. He barks out, making her flinch. So Spill, why aren't you with him now? What happened? The room was quiet for a long moment, with the rain outside the only sound. I knew he would go. I knew he wouldn't return to UA, and I knew I couldn't stop him. So, I went with him to make sure he didn't push himself and to help him if the League attacked. She allows a weak smile. It was going well. So well that we admitted our feelings for each other. Despite the somber atmosphere, 𝐎𝐻𝑝 and 𝐎𝐻𝑝 both held each other and squeaked with excitement. So that's why he ditched you, to keep you from getting killed because of him. Bakugo concludes. She nods. One of the jailbreakers was sent by 𝗷_1 to capture Izuku. During the fight, she nearly shot me. Her classmates gasp. Are you alright? Izuku asks with worry, stepping towards her friend. She smiles at her. I'm okay. Thanks to Izuku. He became my hero and saved me. She frowns again. The jailbreaker told us about a mansion she was supposed to bring Izuku to. It was a trap set for him to taunt and drag him down. A trap he succeeded with, it would appear. Ida said. In more ways than one. She turns to look Bakugo directly in his eyes. At the end of his recorded monologue, he mentioned me now being on his capture list. Bakugo narrows his eyes at her. Why you specifically? Azui asks. If he wanted to capture someone to use as bait, why not his mother or any of us? Because he doesn't need to. Bakugo answers. Deku has always put other people before himself. 𝗷_1 could dangle a puppy in front of the nerd, and he'd rush in without thinking. The people in the room all agree with that point. No. The only reason he'd want you is for your quirk. She nods in confirmation. But why? Kaminari asks. You can only create non-living things, right? What would 𝗷_1 want with something like that? Not to mention Shigaraki's whole thing is destroying everything. Zero adds. Seems counterintuitive to steal your quirk, wouldn't it? Unless. Bakugo said, meeting the serious eyes of Yaoyorozu. Unless my quirk evolved, and has the ability to create more than just non-living objects. A sense of dread spreads throughout the students. Even Endeavor and Nizu were fearful of the potential her quirk now possesses. Katsuki, I created a way into one for all. What? The entire class shouts with Bakugo stunned speechless. Wait. When did this happen? Mineta stutters out. At the hospital. When you were passed out beside Midoriya, right? 𝗬𝗓𝗄 answers, sparking the memories of Ida, Azui, and Izuku as well. The other students blurt out questions, prompting Yaoyorozu and even Nizu to explain the fundamentals of consciousness and quirk factors as well as how one for all itself. Yamamoto, Izuku says, holding her friend as she slightly leans against her. So, that explains why Midoriya is on his own. Ida states, if 𝗷_1 manages to get a hold of Yaoyorozu's quirk, not only would it give him another avenue to steal one for all, but also allow him to create almost anything. And with Shigaraki's regeneration, he wouldn't have the same limits as Yaoyorozu. Todoroki adds, the room falling silent as the ramifications hide them all. Finally, Todoroki turns on Endeavor. That still leaves the main issue at hand. Midoriya is out there, alone and vulnerable. With the stakes even graver now, we can't afford to let either Midoriya or Yaoyorozu face that monster alone. Yaoyorozu gives him a grateful smile. He's right, Ida says, stepping forward. Class 1A sticks together. We'll track him down and we'll stand by his side. We know that One for All has burdened Midoriya with a terrible responsibility. Yaoyorozu had the right idea this entire time. He's our friend too. And knowing that someone we care about is walking a treacherous path means we can't look to the future with a smile. He looks at Yaoyorozu. Will you be joining us? She meets his eyes, the support of her classmates fueling her drive and pushing away the feeling of hopelessness that had begun to set in. She gives him a firm nod. I promised his mother I wouldn't let him carry this responsibility alone. He clutches her fist. And I won't break it. Midoriya slowly made his way forward. He doesn't care where he was going, following the pull of danger sense wherever it lead him. For days now he's been moving from one incident to another, making quick work of the jailbreakers and receiving no new information regarding 𝗷_1 or Shigaraki. Sadly, his current appearance made the citizens he was saving think he was a villain himself, even going so far as to believe he was working for 𝗷_1. The only thing that kept his mind alert and active was 𝗷_1's threats and his interest in Yaoyorozu. After hours of thinking about it, He came to a single conclusion. Search. The quirk he stole from Ragdoll. He must have discovered her quirk's evolution with that. His danger sense flares up, sending him rushing for the source. Momo, I was terrified when you first appeared in One for All. It guaranteed you'd draw his attention. But at the same time I was thrilled. Because it meant I wouldn't have to face this threat alone. He reaches the spot and easily captures the jailbreaker, getting nothing out of him. Now I see how selfish I was to think that. I shouldn't have brought you with me. Shigaraki wouldn't have noticed you and never have learned about your quirk. It's not selfish to want to be happy, Midoriya. Nana Shimura said, her ghostly appearance floating behind him. Besides, it was her decision too. A decision made because of me. Just like last time, my desires influenced her to come with me. He thinks back to the two of them in the hospital before the Kamino incident. The hindsight of that moment fueling his anger. And because of that, she's now on All for One's radar. I have to stop him before he lays a hand on her. Before she could say more, he leaps away. The thought of her that once fueled his drive to save people now drives him to self-destruction. She said sadly, returning to her seat within One for All. It was a mistake to allow the girl to get involved. Bruce said coldly, meeting the sad eyes of Shimura. Lay off that already. It's not entirely her fault here. Banjo speaks up. This kid, he can't help but blame himself, since it was his desire to help people that got him One for All in the first place. And that same desire has put the person he loves most in danger. And finishes. Exactly. Her quirk being what it is, just adds fuel to that. He's in pain. And he's using that pain to save lives. An honorable use for it. Kudo chimes in, leaning against his seat. You approve? Bruce asks, looking at him. He can't sit idle by and wait for All for One to strike first. Certainly, not under these circumstances. And the pain of love can be a powerful tool, if used correctly. Her ability to circumvent the transfer rule is ultimately irrelevant, given his current strategy with Tomura's hatred, and he has always been a foreboding threat with the amounts of quirks at his disposal. He looks over his shoulder at them all. However, I think there is one thing Izuku Midoriya needs more than anything else right now. Meanwhile, Midoriya is soaring through the air before landing at the Ground Zero in Kamino Ward where All Might fought All for One. Ironic, he mutters, thinking back to his spat with Shimura. The memory of Yaoyorozu in her disguise pops into his head. I swear, Momo, I'll keep All for One away from you. But who will keep you away from All for One? His danger sense flares up, making him turn towards the statue of All Might. A mob of people gather at the foot of it with a jailbreaker standing squarely in the middle of them. So full of pain and anger, worry and anxiety. You wish to fight alone, so you're exhausted. Just like he predicted you'd be. Dictator. Midoriya growls out, recalling that the villain's quirk was Despot, a quirk that lets him manipulate the people around him like a puppet. Where is he? Where is All for One? Oh. Still got some fight in you, eh? How fun. He waves his hands around, forcing citizens to stand in between him and Midoriya. But you have to get past these ignorant fools first, hero. The people under his control all panic, begging for help and unable to move themselves. Midoriya braces himself but is so worn down he can barely keep his eyes open. Such a shame that girl he wants isn't with you. Midoriya's eyes widen, fully awake. I wanted to bring the both of you to All for One and... Suddenly, Midoriya leaps into the air, the force behind it cracking the ground beneath him. He lunges over the crowd, prepares Black Whip. I won't let him get to her. In a panic, Dictator flings a girl in Midoriya's path. Seeing her causes him to freeze as thoughts of Yaoyorozu about to get shot flashes in his mind. It was enough for other people to catch him and drag him to the ground, ripping his mask off in the process. The controlled people pile on him, holding him down long enough for his exhaustion to take hold, causing his eyes to start closing. Damn it! A voice reaches his ears, along with the crackles of tiny explosions. Armor-piercing shot. Bakugo shouts, aiming his attack down at Dictator, knocking him out and freeing the citizens from his control. The citizens holding him down now release him, backing off before running away. As this happened, Midoriya was staring up at Bakugo, in complete surprise. Bakugo looks at his childhood friend while speaking into his phone. Over here. I've found him. A giant wave of ice blasts towards the statue, trapping Dictator and forcing the civilians to run away. Midoriya watches as one by one, his classmates arrive soon after Bakugo lands in front of the villain. Before he could process what had happened, Midoriya was staring at the majority of his classmates, making a perimeter around the trapped villain. All of Class A. Except she's not with them. Thank goodness. She must still be with All Might. I don't understand. Why are you all here? Uraraka steps forward, her face stern, but calm. Because we're worried about you. That's nice, but I promise. He grabs his mask and puts it on. I'm fine. Really. No need for concern. So leave. Bakugo starts to clap his hands. Oh yeah. Great speech. Just what we wanted from the famous one for all successor. Real talk, are you able to smile right now? Come on, go ahead and show us. In order to smile, for everyone to live in peace, I have to go. He replies, almost as a growl, as an image of Yaoyorozu sitting beside Eri as she writes a letter with Nijire and Mirio close by. He stands up, activating One for All, and really growls out. Everyone, get out of my way. You're gonna have to make us. You busted ass All Might wannabe. Bakugo shouts back, smiling at Midoriya, but an image of Yaoyorozu crying into his chest at the hospital, asking him to let her go to Midoriya's side, flashes in his head. Midoriya. Ida says, the memory of Midoriya and Yaoyorozu smiling together as they made their way to the teacher's dorms to ease Eri's worries, the two of them smiling before it changes to Yaoyorozu crying with worry over him back at Nizu's office. We had a feeling that's what you were going to say. Let's do this, class. Right. Achiko replies, recalling the emotional cleansing she and Yaoyorozu had on the hospital roof, the regret she felt for getting in the way of their growing love. Deku. Yamamoe. I won't stand between you anymore. From now on, I'll fight to save you both. Off in the distance hovers two people, watching the student heroes confront their friend. Endeavor couldn't help but have mixed feeling about this, as Midoriya was his responsibility, but they wouldn't take no for an answer. He glances at the person beside him. Your prediction was correct. Deku didn't take off right away. As hard as it must be, it's best that you stay back. At least for now. Even so, I hate that I have to watch. Yaoyorozu replies, standing on her new hoverboard, her cape flapping in the wind. After Principal Nizu explained the advanced machinations regarding the UA security system, they began constructing a plan regarding Midoriya and his inevitable attempt to flee. Ashido and Hagakure suggested she confront him, only to shot it down, explaining that she was the last person Midoriya wants near him. She would have to wait until the rest of the class wore him down and prove to him they could handle themselves. Once the plan was made, Yaoyorozu was giving Shoji a large roll of electrical tape for his appendages when Bakugo and Uraraka approached her. Bakugo yelled at her for not at least bringing him along, and Uraraka offered congratulations regarding Midoriya, sharing a hug afterward. Suddenly, the area around the statue was covered in purple smoke, followed by Midoriya blasting away and a large flock of birds sent by Koda. He's moving, Endeavor says, then looks to her. We need to restrain the villain. With that, he rockets towards his statue as she watches Zero and Jiro attempt to convince Midoriya. Following once Tokoimi carries him into the building where he, Kaminari, and Shoji were waiting. Hear us out. If you don't, then the next time Eri wants candy apples, you don't get to use my food coloring. Midoriya sat against the building's column with dark shadow, keeping a tight grip around him. He had just told Ojiro that all FO1 would kill anyone at UA to get One for All, and now Sato had just finished his attempt. That's fine. Anyone can make them for her. She doesn't need me. As he said that, memories of that day out with Eri and Yaoyorozu came flooding in. Finding out that the girl he loves was helping Eri fills him with a strength that was loosening Dark Shadow's hold. The sound of running reaches him as Kaminari appears, wrapping an arm around Midoriya, allowing Dark Shadow to keep his hold while bringing Tokoimi inside. Listen, my dude. I know One for All is super important and everything, but right now there's something crucial you gotta accept. You and me may be totally different in some ways, but you're my friend. So I'm doing you a solid, even if you don't want it. I told you. Midoriya starts to struggle when Shoji appears and uses his duplication to wrap him, 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗧𝗏𝗃 to the column. Midoriya eyes the substance around his duplications. What's this on his arms? What sort of support items are these? I'm wrapped in electrical tape, Shoji said, narrowing his eyes. He thinks back to during the planning stages of this mission. He, along with a few others from the class, looked at Yaoyorozu with surprise after she told him to drop her name. I don't understand it, Yaoyorozu, but I trust you. Courtesy of Yaoyorozu. Midoriya stiffens while sucking in a breath of air, making 𝗵𝗃 nervous. Do you recall what you said at camp? That with a group like this, we could probably even go up against All Might. Your words. This gloom will do nicely, Tokoemi said, walking beside Shoji. Dark shadow, Ragnarok, womb. The creature of darkness grows until it covers the entire column, trapping Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃 within. Notice I used Dark Shadow's offensive ability to protect. That move was your idea. Midoriya was silent. Stand down. We're not a bunch of fragile victims you have to keep out of harm's way. Shoji presses. Come on, Midoriya. Wouldn't you rather relax instead? You could really use a bath. 𝗵𝗃 says with a pleading look. Where? The three boys go silent. Where is she? Midoriya asks with a deep voice, forcing Shoji and Tokoemi to tighten their hold. Where's Momo? She's worried about you, dude. 𝗵𝗃 tightens his grip while bringing out some bolts. Stop being so dense and let's go back. Let us take you to her. I give you my word she's safe. Tokoemi adds. She wants to fight by your side just as much as we do. Even more so. Shoji tells him. Let us join you. I can't be near you. I can't be near her. Midoriya. No. 𝗵𝗃 releases his electricity, but he was too late. Midoriya raises his power to 45% and launches himself out of the building, easily powering through Shoji's arms and Dark Shadow. He managed to break out of Ragnarok. Insane. Shoji returns his arms as 𝗵𝗃 stumbles beside them. I hope this is what she wanted to happen. Midoriya soars through the air, sniffling. Damn it. Why are you all here? Can't you understand how much danger you all are? His mask flies off his head. And Momo's here too? No, I can't. I can't lose. His eyes widen as a disturbing thought occurs to him. Heaven-piercing ice wall. A giant column of ice appears in his way, crashing through it and getting stuck. I can see it on your face. Midoriya looks up and glares at Todoroki. You want to cry, but your burden won't allow you to. He looks at his ragged friend, thinking back to his conversation on the back at their dorms. We're friends, remember? I'll help whenever you need me, whether you ask for it or not. They meet each other's eyes, that disturbing thought lingering. Midoriya. He looks to the nearby building where Azui was clinging to a wall. I won't let you go. I was watching as Ochako and Yamamo fought over you. Midoriya flinches again, sending a crack up the ice. I knew you were headed towards something special, regardless of one for all. So, I'm going to make sure that you have the time to enjoy spending with her. Yaoyorozu hovers close to the ground before recalling her hoverboard as Kirishima, Hagakure, and Aoyama finish getting Dictator out of the wall of ice as Endeavor makes his way to them. Endeavor. Yamamo. Bakugo and Todoroki captured this villain. Kirishima explains as Yaoyorozu gets jumped by Hagakure. All I managed to do was chip him out of the ice. Dictator. Endeavor said, looking to Yaoyorozu. Restrain him, please. Right. She proceeds to create large restraints before placing them on with Hagakure's help. The two of you can round up any hero-hating citizens and bring them to a shelter, the pro instructs. He turns when Hawks contacts him regarding Midoriya as Yaoyorozu and the other students look at the column of ice their friend was stuck in. Damn it. How am I supposed to help Deku when he's flying around so fast? Kirishima grunts out while removing his headgear. I hate this. There's a ton of important stuff I want to tell him. He turns to Yaoyorozu. Well? She nods in agreement, leading them towards their classmate as Endeavor informs Hawks to let the students handle Midoriya. In order to be our best selves, we'll save you, the refugees at UA, and everyone else. Anybody out there in need of a hero. Midoriya staggers on wobbly legs, his eyes wide and mouth agape. His friends from Class A put everything they had into catching him, even when he used Fwack's 100%. And now, his childhood friend had just finished apologizing to him, even using his actual name. Don't you get it? You, all of you, have already far surpassed me. His legs give in, causing him to fall forwards. Izuku. The sudden, familiar voice revitalizes Midoriya enough that he steadies himself. Bakugo stands up and tilts his head to the side. Slowly, Midoriya looks over and sees Yaoyorozu standing in an alley, tears streaming down her face. Amo, he said weakly, watching her run towards him. The closer she got, the clearer that disturbing thought from earlier grew clearer. It was of Chisaki raving about Nagant promising to take him to see the old head of the 𝐓𝗧𝗏. What he was going on about earlier regarding keeping Yaoyorozu away brought forth a terrifying possibility. I made a mistake, Momo. She reaches his side, wrapping her arms around him just as his legs gave out. She eases him down and lets Midoriya lay his head on her chest. Momo, please forgive me. I already have Izuku. She presses her head against his. The last thing he sees before passing out is her bright smile. The same one she gave him during their first date. Let's go home. As she cradles his unconscious body, Bakugo, Todoroki, Uraraka, and Shoji stand around them. She looks up at Bakugo, offering her his hand up. She takes it and, with Todoroki and Uraraka's helps, they get Midoriya settled in Shoji's extra appendages. She watches with Uraraka as they carry him back to their transports. We did it, Yamamoto. We're bringing him home. Uraraka looks at her friend with a concerned look. Which means things will only get tougher from here. Yaoyorozu looks at her friend and nods, her smile still present with an eyes full of hope. Midoriya awoke upon Shoji's back, wrapped up in his appendages with Yaoyorozu right beside them. 13, he's awake. Shoji announces. The pro-hero turns from greeting Yaoyorozu. Good. She opens her suit's helmet, smiling at the ragged hero. Hi there. Midoriya, can you hear me? She asks. 13? He replies. She explains the situation regarding the anti-hero citizens and jailbreakers, telling him his and Yaoyorozu's efforts were a great help and that things were stable enough for others to pick up the slack for them. He looks up at the giant wall before them that had UA emergency security system written on it. This is the UA barrier to be exact. Zero points out. And that's just the tip of the security iceberg. Hagakure adds how he'll geek out about it and that it could merge with Shiketsu High. Deku looks at the wall. I just can't take this risk. The sound of the crowd from behind the wall could be heard, chanting out, keep the boy away. A hand brushes against his cheek, making him turn to see Yaoyorozu looking up at him with a reassuring smile. He looks into her steady gaze, then leans into the touch, pressing his lips against it with a light kiss without meaning to. They enter through the front gate to a crowd of refugees protesting against him staying there, even as the teachers try and calm them down. Midoriya, having gotten off of Shoji's back, now stands beside Yaoyorozu, surrounded by their friends. But that wasn't enough to block out the chanting, as he takes a step back towards the front gate. She grabs hold of his arm and stares into his eyes, the two of them having a wordless argument between them. It's gonna be okay, Deku. They look away from one another to see Ichigo standing on his other side, grabbing his hand. Yaoyorozu gives her a thankful smile as Ichigo nods back at her before facing the crowd, determined. I won't let either of you suffer anymore. When a hero suffers, who's supposed to protect them? As they slowly make their way towards the crowd, the three of them could see Mrs. Midoriya within the crowd, reaching out to them as tears pour down her face as Mrs. Bakugo holds her back. Yaoyorozu manages to meet the older woman's eyes with a pained look of her own. The principal wasn't able to convince them? Zero asks aloud close by. There were some who seemed to understand the situation. But 13 replies as they watch Present Mike and Best Jeanist try to calm the people down, only for their attempts to backfire, stoking their anger and fear even more. Their words hit Midoriya harder than most of what Shigaraki or All for One have thrown at him. He stares at the crowd, horrified and breathing heavily. Yaoyorozu throws herself in front of him, blocking the sight and replacing it with her tearful face. She grabs hold of his face and eases him to meet her gaze. But it wasn't enough to drown out their chanting. This was a mistake, Momo. I can't stay and put their lives at risk. Yes, we can, Izuku. She replies. He sucks in a breath, realizing she was in the same situation as him. Even though the crowd doesn't understand that, she's hearing their fears and anger the same way as him. But here she is, sure in the belief of their decision to return, and in their friends. As they were arguing, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 dashes towards Present Mike, grabs his megaphone and leaps her way up to the top of the school. The student couple turn and watch as their friend lifts the megaphone to her mouth and speaks. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 has a very special power. Her announcement draws everyone's attention, going back and forth with the man in the crowd, explaining that they were the ones that brought him here. What is she doing? 𝗵𝗃 asks. Yaoyorozu smiles up at her friend and former rival for his heart. You can do it, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. She cheers on while intertwine her fingers with 𝗵𝗃's. His ability is special, created to defeat all for one. That's why the villains are after him. Why he's been fighting this whole time. And he's been doing it alongside his partner until recently, when they started threatening her. They left to protect every one of us. But I want you to look at them now. Some of the people from the crowd closest to the gathered students turn and look at the two heroes standing together with their hands intertwined, watching 𝗧𝗵𝗲 continue. They want to change our situation more than anybody, and they've put themselves in harm's way to do it. Do you see what that's done to them? Further within the crowd, Mrs. 𝗵𝗃 and Mrs. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏 look on at their children, terrified for them. Suddenly, a gentle hand rests on her shoulder opposite of Mrs. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏. This draws their attention to a married couple with the same worrying looks on their faces they had. The man had the same silver eyes that his daughter has, while the woman bears the striking resemblance to her. Mr. and Mrs. Yaoyorozu meet the other two ladies' eyes for a moment before they all look back towards their kids. Just because someone has a special power doesn't mean they're a special person. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shouts out, her own parents within the crowd crying with pride for their daughter. The group of people go silent as the ordinary woman the two heroes saved before, 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐵, looks over the crowd, recognizing them. Those two, they're the ones who rescued me. Even with the fancy system up and running, these idiots are still terrified, 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗏 comments while standing beside Yaoyorozu. More of the crowd turned to look at them, commenting on his ragged appearance and the desperation she was projecting. They must have kept fighting, 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 said, drawing the attention of those around her. Those two went out of their way to save me, then took off to save others. The man from the crowd addresses Uraraka and continues to argue, saying that they'll end up covered in mud. The heroes are the ones getting dirty. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shouts back, making him flinch back a step. They're the ones that have to wash away the stain. 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐽 steps up beside 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, watching her friend giving it everything she's got for the sake of their friends. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, you get it, right? She's up there fighting. For all of us. Ida says, walking up to 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏's other side. She wants to see everyone smiling again. Especially you two. The rundown hero watches on, briefly looking at Yaoyorozu, who also had her eyes glued to Uraraka. He thinks back to the night she told him of their girl thing. How it was about him as well as how they were able to patch things up. Even though I chose to be with Momo, Uraraka is still. He looks back at 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗏 on the verge of tears upon seeing her work so hard for them. For him. Uraraka. I wish I could reassure everybody here, but I can't. I'm sorry about that. Really, I am. The truth is, we're all scared. We're just like you. We care about our friends and neighbors too. She takes a breath after thinking about how heroes and the people they protect also protect them. So please, lend him your support. Help him fight for us. A memory of Himiko Toga with tears in her eyes along with her breakdown with Yaoyorozu flashed through her head, making her eye twitch. She grips the megaphone. Search your hearts. Will you allow them to rest at your side? Will you give them time to prepare and protect you? Mrs. 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 and the Yaoyorozus look at her with moist eyes. Izuku 𝗵𝗃𝗏 is carrying the burden of his power and trying to keep us safe. Both 𝗵𝗃𝗏 and Yaoyorozu watch with tears streaming down their faces. Yaoyorozu leans in toward him, placing her free hand against his chest as he wraps his free arm around her. But he's still got a lot to learn. He's just a kid. I'm begging you, she shouts, making 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 feel so overwhelmed his legs give out from under him. Yaoyorozu catches him and eases the two of them down. Let Yaoyorozu continue to be his hero academy. The memory of Uraraka saving him from falling on his face the first time they met flashes in his mind. As they bail their eyes out, 𝐎𝑗𝑢𝑧𝑖 runs towards them from the crowd, dropping the umbrella she was using. But as she got closer to the couple, a small boy darts past her, wearing a red hat with horns and red shoes that are the exact match to the ones Midoriya often wore. Kota reaches out to Midoriya with tears in his eyes, reaching him just as 𝐎𝑗𝑢𝑧𝑖 reaches Yaoyorozu ready to help the worn-out hero course students. As soon as the doors opened up, most of the guys grab Midoriya and drag him away to the baths, not giving him a chance to say anything to Yaoyorozu or 𝐒𝐴chiko. The two of them smile as they go with 𝐒𝐴chiko letting out a huge yawn. "I'm heading to bed now. I'm so Yaoyorozu turns on her and grabs her into a tight hug. "Words can't describe how grateful I am, 𝐒𝐴chiko. Thank you." They two friends hold each other as their remaining friends go and prepare dinner for everyone while others just head off to bed. Only Ishido, Hagakure, and the other girls stuck around Yaoyorozu and 𝐒𝐴chiko, the pink and invisible friends gushing over the happy conclusion to the love triangle drama. "I'm just glad you two are back," 𝐒𝐴chiko says, tightening her hold. "I'm happy you two are finally together, Yamamoe." "Really?" The two friends separate, allowing Yaoyorozu to smile at her friend. "I'm glad to have you blessing, 𝐒𝐴chiko." With another yawn, 𝐒𝐴chiko heads off to bed. After a quick change of clothes in the girls' baths, and able to hear the boys putting Midoriya through a wash parade by the sounds of it, she returns to the kitchen to assist with preparing dinner until Midoriya joins them. As he asks about Uraraka, Ishido and Jiro encourage Yaoyorozu to join him at the couch. She gives in, sitting beside the now clean boy on the couch opposite the kitchen. Mineta gives them a cheeky look. "So, Midoriya, you two share a real kiss yet?" His eyes widen in surprise as Yaoyorozu lets a blush form on her face. "Dude, seriously? Let them catch their breath first before asking something like that," Jiro said, giving Mineta a disappointed look. Come on. We're all friends here." Ishido chimes in, leaning against the back of the couch, thrusting her head between the two embarrassed teens. "So Spill, did you kiss yet?" "Oh well." Yaoyorozu looks away as both her and Midoriya's faces grew red. "You did." Hagakure joins in beside Midoriya, her invisible face mere hairs from his without him seeing it, but still sensing it. "Was it on the lips? Tell us. Tell us." "Ease up on them already," Todoroki said, entering the room, while drying off his hair. "Their relationship is none of our business. And besides, wasn't the reason we brought Midoriya back so he can rest?" He makes his way to his two friends, who were giving him grateful smiles. Hounding them with personal questions won't help with that. Ishido blows him an annoyed raspberry as Hagakure gives an invisible pout. Mineta comments on Todoroki's coolness as he takes a seat beside Midoriya. "You two okay?" he asks, genuinely happy to see them together, wondering if his talk from earlier played a part in it. "Yeah, for the most part," Midoriya admits, getting a concerned look from Todoroki. "I still need to apologize to All Might for abandoning him as well, but I can't seem to get a hold of him." Todoroki slowly points at the window across from him where All Might was pressed against it, watching them. "What's he doing out there?" he asks comically. He gets up from the couch along with Yaoyorozu and heads for the front door with Ishido and a few others following suit. The door swings open as All Might barges in, standing before the two of them and bows. "I am here to apologize for not being of any use." "Young Midoriya, young Yaoyorozu." "What?" They both cry out. "What are you talking about? You help us a ton out there," Midoriya quickly says. "If you're going to apologize for doing something shady, then you'd better ask us for forgiveness too." Ishido inserts herself, still annoyed over not getting a straight answer from Yaoyorozu about kissing Midoriya. "You can't just take our friends away and ghost us." All Might stands straight up, his expression more serious. "The day of the final battle will soon be here." His words causes the gathered students to tense up. "I'm sorry that I caused everyone to worry." He tells them about the new intel Stain had given him and that more info will be given in the coming days, encouraging everyone to prepare and letting them know he will do his best to help, as weak as he is. "All Might," Midoriya said once All Might was finished. "The food you gave us was amazing and kept our strength up." He looks between him and Yaoyorozu. "I lost my way because I distances myself from the two of you. So from now on." He intertwines his fingers with Yaoyorozu and looks at him. the action making both Ishido and Hagakure squeak with excitement. We fight. Side by side. Yes. We'll protect the world together, she adds, squeezing his hand while placing her free hand to her chest, thinking back to when he dropped her off for Endeavor to retrieve, how terrible he looked when he apologized. All Might looks at the two of them and gives them a thankful smile. Thank you all. As he leaves, Yaoyorozu could feel Midoriya start to relax, and his exhaustion taking over. She guides him back to the couch as Ishido, Sato, and Tokoimi see All Might off. As soon as she sits him down, Midoriya collapses against the back of the couch, asleep. Which means now it's your turn. Midoriya is startled awake, his hand shot out in front of him with tendrils of black whip extending from it. Breathing heavily, he looks around, noticing he was in the dorm's common area that was dark and still. That's right, we're back home. He looks to his side expecting to find Yaoyorozu, only to find an empty couch and the pitch black of the night beyond the windows. Without another thought, he recalls Black Whip, throws the blanket to the side, and quietly makes his way to Yaoyorozu's room. It wasn't until he stood in front of it, ready to blatantly open the door, did his tired mind finally put together what he was about to do. After spending a month together, taking turns resting while the other kept watch, he had grown used to sleeping with her present. That was one of the reasons he didn't stop and rest once he went off on his own. But now that they were back at the dorms, the door suddenly opens, startling both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu. Izuku. Oh. Hey, Momo. I couldn't sleep and well. She smiles at him, then steps to the side, inviting him into her room. I was thinking the same thing. He enters her room, standing beside her as she closes the door behind him. She takes his hand and leads them to her bed. Gone was the large bed he had seen during the room competition they had when they first moved into the dorms, replaced with a normal size yet still immensely comfortable one. She lays down first with Midoriya after a moment of hesitation, this being a bed and not just leaning against a wall, lays down beside her, pulling the covers over them. She presses herself against his side as he leans his head against hers. Did you want to rest first? He asks, making her blink in confusion. She giggles. We're safe in the dorms. She leans her head up and kisses his cheek. We can finally rest together. Oh, right. He laughs nervously, then takes a steady breath before closing his eyes. I've missed you. Momo. I've missed you too. Izuku. Together, with everyone. The early morning rays shone through the blinds, laying along the sleeping forms of Midoriya and Yaoyorozu. The stillness of the morning was a luxury they had almost forgotten about throughout the month they were searching for All for One in the league, only ever taking turns resting or crashing together in the back of All Might's car on the rare occurrence. As such, when a knock on the door causes her to reluctantly open her eyes, she was tempted to ignore whoever was there and rest for a few minutes more. But her nature wouldn't allow such a thing. And she felt the boy beside her deserves those few moments than her and didn't want whoever was at the door to wake him. She slowly crawls out of the bed via the end and silently makes her way to the door, finding the apologetic look of Uraraka with Ajui. Morning. Sorry to wake you. We can't seem to find Deku anywhere. The guys looked in his room but could tell he hadn't been there since he came back. As she spoke, a subtle movement caught Ajui's attention, drawing her to look past Yaoyorozu towards her bed. Her face grew red and flushed as she points past her friend. Ichiko found him. Ichiko looks past her friend to spot Midoriya sound asleep on the bed. The sight and implication made her whole face go dark red. Oh, wow. I didn't think he would. Yaoyorozu looks back at the boy with a tired smile. We've gotten so used to sleeping next to each other. Neither of yous could manage to fall back to sleep. She looks back to address her friends at the door, a light blush on her face as well. We'll be down shortly. Please to everyone the truth. The two girls give each other a concerning look before nodding to their friend, leaving shortly after. Yaoyorozu closes the door and takes a steady breath, already thinking of an excuse for this. She returns to the bed, crawling beside Midoriya. The sudden touch from her hand on his chest causes his eyes to fly open with a start, ready to jump out of the bed had she no held him down. It's me, Izuku. It's okay. He looks at her and clams down, moving his arm back round her. Sorry. I didn't mean to wake you just yet. It's okay. We should probably be getting up anyway. He looks at the door as she leans her head against his chest, a content smile on her face. Was there someone at the door? Machiko and Sue. They were worried about you. They didn't see me sleeping in your bed, did they? He asks, a blush beginning to grow across his face as he looks at her. He's where? His head whips back towards the door, face crimson red as steam seems to drift out of the boy's ears. He could recognize the voices of Ishido, Hagakure, Mineta, Jiro, Kaminari, Siro, and even Ida from that shout. Yaoyorozu leans in closer to him as her own blush returns, still wearing her smile. Yes, they did. Now fully awake, the two of them get out of the bed and make themselves presentable, albeit reluctantly. Him so he could put off having to explain himself to their friends, or worst, their teachers. And her because she wanted to snuggle up with Midoriya longer. They eventually join their class in the common area with Midoriya hiding on the staircase, leaving Yaoyorozu to meet the overly anticipated expressions of Ishido, Jiro, Mineta, and Kaminari along with the invisible one of Hagakure. She simply smiles at her friends. Nothing happened, everyone. We simply laid beside each other in my bed. With that, she heads for the kitchen to help set up breakfast for everyone, leaving the five friends pouting, utterly unsatisfied by her response. Ishido and Mineta's ears twitch. They turn their heads sharply towards the staircase and lock eyes with the deathly nervous Midoriya, who made the mistake of peeking around the corner of the stairs. Midoriya! They shout. Suddenly, he was surrounded by all four of them while Jiro just gawks at him along with the rest of their classmates. What was it like sleeping in a girl's bed? Did you guys make out? Did you two go all the way? Did Yamamoto take your V card? On and on the questions came, nearly drowning Midoriya in a wave of jealousy and raging hormones. He manages to give the other assembled students a pleading look, souring the ominously quiet Ida to step in. You four. Cease this childish behavior at once. His stoic command froze the five of them. As he approaches, Ishido and the others quickly zip to the side and stand in terrified attention as he slowly moves towards Midoriya. The green-haired boy catches his breath. Thanks, Ida. They were getting... He flinches back upon seeing the dark, foreboding expression the class rep held on his face. Given the circumstances surrounding the two of you as class rep, I'll overlook this blatant disregard for the rules regarding sleeping arrangements. However, he gets right in Midoriya's face, making him press against the wall. If this should happen again, I will not hesitate to personally drag you in front of Mr. Aizawa and Principal Mizu. Am I understood? Midoriya rapidly nods his head, terrified of the not-so-idle threat. Ida leans away from the other boy and whips it towards Yaoyorozu, who had been setting the table while this was going on, making the other four flinch. That goes for you as well, Yaoyorozu. As vice class rep, you should know better than to allow such a thing to occur. Even as Ida glares daggers at her, Yaoyorozu continues on her task with a blight smile shining across her face, the sight making most of the gathered students marvel at how laid back she was being, especially about something as serious as allowing a boy to sleep in her bed with her. It's as you say, Ida. Our circumstances are different from the norm, which is why I didn't want to keep last night a secret. She meets his still rigid glare with her light smile. I knew Izuku wouldn't try anything inappropriate, so I didn't see a reason not to allow him to sleep with me. Her choice of words made Mineta and Kaminari flinch and shoot glares at Midoriya, only for Ida to turn his stern gaze on them, settling them down again. Midoriya, meanwhile, had a light blush on his face along with a small smile as he looks at her. She heads back to the kitchen, a light blush on her own face as she scratches an imaginary itch on her cheek. Aside from that, I really miss sleeping next to him. Ishido and Hagakure swoon at that as Mineta and Kaminari continue to harass Midoriya with Ida trying to help settle them down. As Yaoyorozu returns to the kitchen, having been joined by Jiro, she was unaware of the range of looks she was getting from Bakugo, Todoroki, Achiko, and Azui. After breakfast, they all went to their respected bathrooms to clean up and change into their hero costumes. You're really rocking that mask, Yamamoto. Yaoyorozu looks at Jiro as she puts her headgear on, smiling at her friend after she put on her mask and was reaching for her collar, leaving her cape for field work. She smiles at her in response. Ishido grips her vest upon seeing the homage to their fallen teacher. Do you guys think Ms. Midnight would be proud of our progress? She asks, thinking back to a few weeks ago when she asked 𝗵𝗃𝗄 and Todoroki about their training, seeking advice regarding how to better use her acid quirk. Her eyes get moist, once again reminded of their teacher's absences, the feeling spreading throughout the other girls as well. Absolutely. The pink girl looks up at Yaoyorozu, watching her fasten her collar to her suit with a confident smile. I'm positive she'd be celebrating our growth, just like she did when we were picking our hero names. She tells them, thinking back to how enthusiastic she was when they each showed off their chosen name. Ashido giving a light laugh at her first pick being rejected. Yaoyorozu's expression changes to an annoyed smile as she looks at her pink friend. I'm also certain she would have joined in on your teasing of me and Izuku. A good-natured laugh rolls through them, instantly lightening the mood as Hagakure and Ashido crowd her, having returned to their happy, bubbly selves. She turns to a mirror, catching her reflection, smiling at the resemblance to Ms. Midnight and almost certainly imagining her floating there, smiling at them with pride while giving them a perverse wink. Once they were dressed, the girls start to leave with Azui lingering behind. Yamamoto, she calls out, getting the other girls' attention. Can I talk to you? Meanwhile, in the boys' bathroom, Midoriya was again being hounded with personal questions by Mineta and Kaminari while trying to rinse himself off. My dude, you slept beside a girl for a whole month. That's like 1,000,000 times cooler than having one for all, Kaminari said, shaking the boy by his shoulders. Ichi's antics was starting to get on the boy's nerves while Mineta was doing the same while standing on Midoriya's lap, screaming in his face. Come on, Midoriya. Tell us what's like to have a hottie like her hanging off your arm like that. He whines, imagining a perverted image of Yaoyorozu pining for him, instead as Ida and Kirishima move to pry them off Midoriya. None of them realizing just how far they finally pushed him, referring her like that. That's enough. He shouts as One for All sparks to life around his body, the force of both knocking the two boys back a few steps. All the gather students watch in concern as Midoriya gets to his feet and glares down at Mineta, his eyes almost flashing red. I can tolerate being pestered about my relationship with Momo, but I won't let anyone refer to her in that way. Got it? He snaps at them, an image of All for One flashing through his mind as Mineta and Kaminari nervously nod. Calming down, Midoriya sees the look of fear on his friends' faces and powers down, returning to his more nervous self. Sorry for yelling like that. It's just that she's my girlfriend now. So, the two boys' fear in stall vanishes, replaced with excitement as they stand beside him with amazement. You said it. You called her your girlfriend, Kaminari said. So you two really are together? Mineta postures. You better work on keeping that temper under control, Deku. The three boys turn to see Bakugo drying his hair while heading for his locker, looking over his shoulder at them. Unless you want a repeat of last time. The two of them lock eyes, both recalling the moment he got skewered by Shigaraki. Todoroki also recalls how reckless with anger Midoriya had gotten after witnessing that, leading to the villain managing to touch him. Zero smirks looking at the explosive boy. Got any tips for him, Bakugo? Go die, tape arms, he shouts. The mood shifts to a more pleasant one as Todoroki and Ida eye Midoriya with concern. As the boys head out of the baths fully costumed, the ghostly form of Kudo appears behind him. The boy's right, he said once the room was clear. Banjo warned you about that once before, if I recall. I haven't forgotten. Midoriya pauses, thinking back to All for One pointing at them from his message, his sickening grin plastered on his face. It hits different when Momo is involved. As he spoke with the second wielded of One for All, his danger sense hadn't picked up on Aoyama hiding just outside the doorway, listening to him talking to himself. Nana Shimura appears beside Kudo and offers the young hero a sympathetic smile that reminds him of Yaoyorozu. It does, doesn't it? Knowing no matter what action you take, it'll be your loved ones who could end up suffering for it. She thinks back to the day she left her son Kotaro to his new guardian, bawling his eyes out for her not go. A choice that still haunts her to this day. But you can see how well things turn out when actions to protect them end up. Midoriya and Kudo give the grieving mother sympathetic looks, the The image of Shigaraki twisted up with all for one as he was during his attempt to steal one for all flashes through their minds. She prevents a tear from rolling down her cheek as she continues. Use your anger to fight alongside Momo and your friends. That's the best course of action for you all now. Right. He replies with a solemn nod. The sudden response made Aoyama flinch, hearing the conviction behind the response. He forces a smile on his face. Midoriya? He steps through the door with a flamboyant flare, the air around his head seemingly glowing. There you are. He approaches the startled boy, urging his friend on as they leave the baths. As they pass the girls' bathroom entrance, Midoriya accidentally caught a glimpse of Yaoyorozu sitting beside Azui, conversing. She had just finished telling her friend about the worries she had the night they fought Tesla regarding their relationship and Himiko Toga. When I first noticed you two getting closer, I was afraid of what Himiko Toga would do if she found out. The frog girl confesses, gripping her fist with frustration. And when you mentioned running into her, I was relieved to hear she hadn't managed to get any of your blood. The thought of her using it against Midoriya and Izuku. Hearing that brought back the memory of her encounter with the villain at the outskirts of Gunga Villa. She lifts her arm to see the now-healed cut she received from Toga over a month ago. I understand your concern, Sue. Unfortunately, she shows the cut to her friend, causing her to eye the scar with worry. She did manage to steal some when I fought her while we tried to stop Gigantomachie's rampage. That's not good, her friend says, looking out towards the direction their friends were gathering in the common area. Sue, could she have done anything different to avoid going down this villainous road? Yaoyorozu asks, sliding her fingers across her scar. Azui tilts her head while placing her finger on her chin. Rabbit? After she got my blood, Toga told me what Hawks did to Twice. He was her friend, Sue. And in that way, I'm able to sympathize with her. Because I almost lost Izuku. Azui lays a hand on her shoulder while she grabs her arm where the scar was. Memories of the blade press to her throat while Toga asks her those questions with a dark look in her eyes. It got me thinking that maybe to her and the rest of the league, the heroes are the villains and the villains are the heroes. Because they were the ones to offer them help when they needed it most. Azui looks down at her friend's scar with a sad look. You could be right about that. I don't know if there were other options available for her or those that are called villains. She looks back at her friend with a clear mind. But there's no excusing them for all the hurt they've caused others from the choices they've already made. I know that. Yaoyorozu smiles at her friend sadly. And they probably know that too. She recalls Toga telling her the world was too hard to live in for her. And just like us, they're fighting with everything they have to change the world towards their better version of it. She looks out towards the door where the sound of their friends waiting in the lobby of their dorm. I can't condone her actions or those of the leagues. Ever. But I can understand them. She grips her hands tightly after placing them on her knees. Which makes this coming battle even scarier. Azui wraps an arm around her friend and the two lean against each other, sharing a quiet moment together. Whatever happens, Yamamoto, I'll fight with everything I have, so that you, me, Midoriya, Izuku, and everyone can enjoy the time we spend together without all for one's shadow looming over us. Yaoyorozu allows a smile to appear on her face. As will Izuku. Thanks to Star's sacrifice crippling Shigaraki, we now have a week's extension before he's ready to strike. All Might had just finished telling Class A about Star and Stripe's death at the hands of Shigaraki, encouraging them to use this time to get as strong as possible. As some of the students explained to All Might how much they've improved throughout the previous month, Midoriya and Yaoyorozu mournful look between each other for the fallen #1 American hero, knowing she was coming to Japan to help them. After that, the class head outside to resume their intensive training efforts. Kirishima acting as a hardened punching bag for Sato, Shoji, and Ojiro as they pummel him with everything they got. Kota improving his command over birds as Zero attempts to capture Tokoimi, who fights him off while Dark Shadow covering his body for better combat mobility. Mineta threw as many of his balls at Ishido and Jiro, who melt and blast them away before they ever reach them. Izuku and Azui performing combo moves in an attempt to hit Ida as he sprints around, avoiding them. Ready, Kaminari? Yaoyorozu calls out, having finished creating dozens of high-voltage batteries for the electric-wielding student to pour his power into. This one's gonna sting. He shouts, unleashing his power through the many cords he was holding that connected the batteries. She covers her eyes from the awesome display of electrical power, recalling her previous encounters with Tesla as a smirk crosses her lips. "I'm willing to bet 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 much more powerful than you are now, Tesla," she thinks to herself. Her smirk shifts into a slight frown as she recalls her talk with 𝐻𝐸𝐫 and what choices the villains had throughout their lives. And what choices they have now. Black Whip. She looks over her shoulder to see Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃𝗄 moving around in the air behind her. The sight was a familiar one from the evening training sessions they had prior to the two-prong raid against the League of Villains over a month ago. "Hey Yamamoto." She looks back at 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻, who was finished charging the batteries and was now smirking at her. "You look like you want to join in." Apologizes 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻, "but I'm more than happy to assist you with your progress as well." "No, sweet. I get it." Actually, as he spoke, Ishido, Jiro, and Mineta joins them. "We wanted to see how tight your teamwork with Midoriya is." "Yeah, fam. Show us what you got." Ishido cheers. They get the attention and interest of everyone else as Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 land. "I'm game. I still owe you two for running off without me," 𝗵𝗃𝗄 says as little explosions pop off on his hands. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu exchange a look before nodding. The two of them are side by side with 𝗵𝗃𝗄, Sato, Sero, and Jiro standing across from them, figuring the team that had the undisputed victory from the team battles stood the best chance against the two of them. "Isn't that a bit unfair for Midoriya and Yamamoto?" Ojiro asks as Hagakure stands close by, her gloves facing towards the forest. "With their overpowered quirks and top-of-the-class smarts, I'd say they have the advantage. Just look." Kirishima points as Midoriya activates his quirk. The confident looks both he and Yaoyorozu were wearing surprising most of them. Except for 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻. "Don't hesitate with these two. It's not just their quirks you gotta watch," 𝗵𝗃𝗄 warns as he gets into his combat stance. "Right," the other three say, following his lead. Jiro couldn't help but note just how much Yaoyorozu has grown since she first fought beside her during the USJ attack. Thinking back to how upset she was at losing to Tokoyami during the sports festival, only to really step up during the licensing exam and in the wake of Gigantomachia rampage. She grins as the two friends lock eyes, ready to take on the other. "Bait and switch?" Yaoyorozu offers silently, her lips hidden behind her collar as she looks knowingly at Jiro. Midoriya nods before holding out his arm, making Jiro blink in confusion. "You guys ready?" Ishido asks, her hand raised up. "They have a plan. Bait and switch." Jiro warns. "Yeah." Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, and 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 shout. "Thanks for the heads up." Sero says, "Go for it." Ishido shouts, throwing her arm down. "Creati." Midoriya shouts as 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 and Sero rush them. Yaoyorozu steps off his offered arm and leaps into the air, summoning her hoverboard while creating two rapid-fire stun blasters. This distracts Sero and the others as 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 nears Midoriya, meeting his smirk as she rains down blasts on him. Jiro and Sero shot tape and sound at Yaoyorozu while Sato stands in front of Jiro, ready to protect her. Midoriya swings his arms at 20%, using a wide-area version of Air Force to knock 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 and Sero flying past Sato, who stands his ground against the blast of wind. "Go Deku!" She shouts down, focusing her fire on the recovering 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 and Sero. With a nod, Midoriya zooms at Sato, just as Jiro's earphone jacks appear beside him, blasting the charging student with her sonic attack. A tendril of Black Whip wraps around his ears just before colliding with Sato, locking the two of them in a power struggle while tanking Jiro's heartbeat distortion. The other students watching gawk and cheer as Yaoyorozu forces 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 and Sero to take cover. "Dynamite." 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 looks at Sero just as he fires a line of tape at him. He catches it with a grin. Sero swings his arm the tape was attached to just as 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 blasts himself off the ground, the two working together to launch him over the rain of fire and giving him a clear shot at Yaoyorozu. "Die!" 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 shouts, blasting at her as she hovers through the air, avoiding his attacks while firing back. Her hoverboard jerks a little, drawing her attention to Sero, who had latched onto it with his tape. She smirks behind her collar, then twists her hoverboard around, dragging Sero into the air faster. As 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗻 drew closer, she pushes a button on both of her blasters before throwing them into the air before him. "Deku!" Even with his hearing protected by Black Whip, Midoriya had been keeping track of Yaoyorozu via the shadows she was casting on the ground. Having seen her throw the 2 blasters, he uses Black Whip to grab Jiro's earphone jacks and direct them at Sado. This forces him to let Midoriya go and Jiro to stop her attack. He simultaneously launches a tendril at Yaoyorozu while pulling Jiro into Sado, stunning her. As 𝗵𝗃𝗲 was about to blast the blasters away along with 𝗬𝗏 about to capture Yaoyorozu, the blasters explode, covering the 3 of them in a smoke screen. Midoriya leaps into the air while pulling down on the tendril and dragging his girlfriend out of the smoke, Black Whip having latched onto her hoverboard right before the smoke covered them. As she rockets downward, Yaoyorozu creates her metal staff, cutting 𝗬𝗏's tape right before passing the airborne Midoriya. The 2 of them smile at each other as their friends watch with awe at how seamless they were coordinating with each other. As he passes her, Midoriya grabs the tape she had cut and enters the smoke screen while she rockets towards the recovering Jiro and Sado. Jiro hesitates to unleash her sonic attack for fear of it hitting 𝗬𝗏 or 𝗵𝗃𝗲, but that hesitation was enough for Yaoyorozu to create a heavy-duty restraint. She leaps off the hoverboard as it collides with Sado, distracting him as she lands behind Jiro, throwing the restraints around the 2 off them, capturing the 2 opposing heroes. Meanwhile, Midoriya passes 𝗬𝗏, dragging him along towards 𝗵𝗃𝗲 as he uses an explosion to clear away the smoke, only to be surprised to see Midoriya within punching distance. "Damn it!" he shouts, his reflexes kick in causing his hands to direct themselves towards the oncoming student, ready to blast him with his cluster attack. With a smirk on his face, Midoriya uses float to rise high enough for 𝗵𝗃𝗲 to see 𝗬𝗏, who was now in his attack's way, making him hesitate with the attack. In that hesitation, Midoriya catches 𝗵𝗃𝗲 in Black Whip, then twists his body around, making 𝗬𝗏 get tangled up in it as well, trapping the both of them within Black Whip and 𝗬𝗏's tape. "Holy crap, you guys!" Ashido shouts as Midoriya lands beside Yaoyorozu and the restrained Sado and Jiro, gently setting down the humble 𝗬𝗏 and the ragging 𝗵𝗃𝗲. "That didn't even last 2 minutes. That's amazing! You 2 beat the team that won their match the fastest." Kirishima points out as Midoriya and Yaoyorozu release their friends, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 getting right in his face, making him lose his previous confidence and nervously backs away. As the rest of the students gush over the training match, no one notices Hagekire's gloves heading into the forest close by. Aoyama and his parents sat in a classroom restrained to chairs as Sakachi, Sanza, and the police stood beside them. All Might, Present Mike, Ectoplasm, and Principal Nizu stood before them while the rest of Class A stood behind them, watching in disbelief. Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃𝗲 stood in the front with Yaoyorozu holding Hagekure right behind them. He had just admitted to everyone the role he and his family played throughout all of the league's many attacks against them. The traitor responsible for the USJ and training camp attacks, who was born quirkless and had received his Keurig from 𝗷-for-1 himself. Yoga Aoyama forces himself to look at his classmates as streams of tears pour from his eyes, focusing on Midoriya and Yaoyorozu, the 2 students whose quirks 𝗷-for-1 wanted, and the students he was ordered to lead into a secluded area where 𝗷-for-1 plans to ambush them with the full force of his league. "I am a villain. Through and through." Aoyama finishes. "I don't believe you," Midoriya shouts, shaking with fury. "Why did you try to save Kaken and Tokoimi at the training camp, huh?" Aoyama flinches in surprise as 𝗵𝗃𝗲 and Tokoimi look to their distraught friend. "What about the message for me? Is that something 𝗷-for-1 told you to do too?" "Of course not." This causes Yaoyorozu to look at Midoriya with surprise. "That night was a desperate cry for help. That went completely over my head. I mean, look at you." Midoriya meets Aoyama eyes long with Yaoyorozu, both of them recognizing something within them. "You're bawling right now. Crying all over yourself. It's obviously not because you failed to do what 𝗷-for-1 wanted." As she stares into the eyes of the friend who was ordered to lead them into a trap, Yaoyorozu couldn't keep from thinking back to the training camp, trembling with nervous the night of the attack. She first thought it was due to the scaring competition they were taking part in, realizing now the truth. But as more tears fell, she also recalled just how much he fought during the attack on Nabu Island. How had he fought alongside Mineta until 𝗵𝗃𝗲 saved them, as well as alongside her during their final assault against them. Stealing her resolve, she steps away from Hagekure to stand between 𝗵𝗃𝗲 and Midoriya. "Izuku and I, We encountered a hero who was hired to do the same thing he ordered you to do, bring Izuku to him. Her own tears fell freely as she met his confused eyes. But, in the end, she stayed true to herself and refused to help him. The memory of Lady Nagant laying on the street, covered in burns and smiling at her, appears in her mind. The problem was he had crushed her spirit. All Might gives the two students a knowing look. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu. Making a mistake or committing a crime doesn't mean you have to be a villain forever. Midoriya states. Grabbing hold of Yaoyorozu's hand, they share a look with each other before nodding, each holding out a hand towards Aoyama. So take our hands. Right now. Bakugo looks at the two of them with understanding. Because I promise you, Midoriya said before they both say together. You can still be a hero. The detective steps in, insisting caution as he orders Aoyama be gagged. He asks Mr. Aoyama about Kamino Ward and why they hadn't leaked their intent, learning that the All-for-One is the one who contacts them. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu share a look and an understanding. Detective, we still have no idea where All-for-One is. But think. The board has changed. Kaminari's eyes widen, recalling the lecture he received from Bakugo, Yaoyorozu, and Midoriya not long after their training match regarding the situation and how much they were at a disadvantage. Wait, hold up. Do we now have a way of forcing them to fight on our terms? The gathered pros and police turn to him with surprise. Hey, he's right. Mineta adds. When you look at it that way. She smirks confidently. He's given us the upper hand. It's possible Aoyama is the only person in the world with the power to trick All-for-One. Midoriya mirrors her smirk and nods before frowning while looking back at Aoyama, holding his hand back out to him. Aoyama. I'll say it one more time, I promise you. You too can be a hero. After that promise, the rest of the class spoke, fighting hard to keep their classmate from losing hope in himself and failing further into despair. Mr. Aizawa chimes in as well via video call, feeling the same way and having an idea, one he tells them after the Aoyamas were made certain they couldn't hear him. Once he finished, the police escorted the Aoyamas away with all of Class A watching them go within the hallway. Yaoyorozu held onto Midoriya's arm tightly as they watch him leave. Aoyama. He shouts, noticing the slight movement from him. Everything will be okay. I promise. Not long after that, they returned to their dorms. The atmosphere was stifling as the somber mood lingers throughout the common area where everyone lounges about. We should make sure we're prepped, said Kirishima. Agreed, replied Shoji. I need to repair my costume. It's basically unwearable right now, said Ida. Yeah, mine too, replied Midoriya. This isn't the time to stop training. We can still improve our quirks, said Yaoyorozu. Duh, relied Jiro. The room goes quiet for a solid moment. Guys, Hagakura's gloves clutch tightly. Let's make sure we beat them. Every single one of them lifts their heads up, revealing the similar furious expression on all of their faces. Right. A few minutes later, Midoriya is leading Ida and Yaoyorozu towards the design studio, still wearing the same furious expressions on their faces. The two boys for their costumes, while she wanted to have the support course students, more specifically 𝗵𝗃, to look over her hoverboard boots too in order to make the board more versatile. As Midoriya reaches for the door, it explodes, knocking him away as Yaoyorozu shifts her expression to horrified one while Ida finds the scene all too familiar. The sound of coughing and groaning comes from the dissipating smoke, revealing 𝗵𝗃 laying on top of Midoriya with her breast pressed against his face. Oh. Hey, Midoriya. Long time no see. Midoriya quickly looks away from the girl's chest and right at Yaoyorozu along with Ida, the both of them becoming deathly afraid for both Midoriya and 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃. The girl looks up and grows nervous upon seeing the dark look on Yaoyorozu's face. Please remove your breasts from my boyfriend's face. 𝗵𝗃 nervously laughs while standing up. Sorry about that, she offers while rubbing the back of her head. One of my babies wasn't quite ready for the tweaks I made to it. Yaoyorozu helps Midoriya to his feet, the boy still nervous about her and how she'll react. So, what brings you guys here? Deku. Yamamoto. The three hero course students turned to find Eri running towards them as they were about to exit the school and meet up with their classmates waiting to head out in an effort to find All-for-One in the league. Yaoyorozu and Midoriya turn to meet the young girl as Ida continues on, giving the three this moment. She reaches them and jumps into Midoriya's arms as tears roll down her cheeks. I missed you guys. I'm sorry I didn't run to you. Hey, it's alright, Eri, he says soothingly, hugging the little girls as Yaoyorozu places a hand on her head. We missed you too, Eri. I'm sorry we haven't made the time to come visit you sooner. Eri pulls away from Midoriya and hugs Yaoyorozu as Mirio, Tamaki, and Nijire approach them. Welcome back, you two. It's crazy what you guys were doing this whole time, Mirio said as he greets Midoriya with a handshake. Kinda wish you had brought me along. But what can you do? If you had gone, poor Eri would have been even more worried, Tamaki points out, making Mirio laugh out loud. You got a point there, Tamaki. That wouldn't have been good, huh? Hey, you two going out searching again with your classmates? Nijire asks while kneeling beside Yaoyorozu as Eri pulls back and looks at the two of them with sad eyes. Do you have to? I wanted to show you how good I've gotten with my quirk. We're sorry, Eri, but this is something we need to do, Yaoyorozu tells her. But when we get back, we'll stop by the teacher's dorm and see you, Midoriya offers, getting a smile out of her. Or we could visit Class A when they come back. You haven't visited them in a while, right? Mirio offers. Yeah, Eri says as Yaoyorozu stands up. It's settled. We'll see you tonight, then, Eri, Midoriya says with a smile as the two of them head out the door, waving to the four of them as they wave back, joining the others. The sun shone brightly as Yaoyorozu soars through the abandoned streets, her modified hoverboard now only covering the bottom of her boots, rather than the typical board she used previously. Being the reason behind her visit to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Yaoyorozu had gotten the girl to make the board much more versatile than it previously was. Partly to better suit her title as the everything hero, but mostly inspired by Lady Nagant and the airwalk Korkul for one gave her. It was a difficult decision to make, utilizing an idea inspired in part by the villain, but the training match the other day reminded her that ideas and abilities brought on by a villain can still be used for heroic deeds. Those modifications seem to be working efficiently. Yaoyorozu smiles while looking to her side. Indeed, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 really outdid herself this time. I'm more impressed you managed to utilize your quirk in such a way, Todoroki, she said as he rockets through the air beside her by propelling his flames out of his left foot and hand, occasionally summoning a chunk of ice around his right side to keep himself from overheating. He gave her a small smile. I figured if Endeavor could pull it off, so could I. He eases himself onto a roof, encouraging her to do the same. A few more days, and I should have optimal control of both my ice and fire. He lifts his hand to show off his gauntlet while rubbing a hand over the gray insulation on his suit. Her smile turns to a frown when he called his father by his hero name, looking back at the rest of their team slowly catching up. I know it's not my place, but he does regret what he's done, she said, thinking back to that moment in the rain he spoke of his regrets and nearly broke down because of them. I know. They stand beside each other waiting for the others to arrive. Todoroki glances at her as the memory of his talk with Midoriya came to mind, and with it the same pang in his chest he felt back then whenever he saw the two of them together. Yaoyorozu. She looks over at him, seeing a slight change in his eyes. When I spoke with Midoriya the night you found us outside the dorm, he mentioned his concern regarding my feelings towards you. This sudden confession startles her, making her take an involuntary step back. Why or what? She stutters out as a light blush appears on her face. He looks back towards their team drawing closer. He was worried I'd be angry at him because of how close we've gotten since teaming up for the cavalry battle. The two of them think back on the last year since they started at UA. Their final practical exam against the Kamino incident and the aftermath with Azui. I've been giving it a lot of thought since that night and… Yaoyorozu braces herself for what he was about to say, terrified he'd make an attempt to be with her knowing full well she was Midoriya, his best friend. Oh no. Please, Todoroki. Don't say it. Not now. I don't want to have to be forced to deny your affections. She thought as the hundreds of dramas her mother enjoys so much flood her thoughts, a great many of them depicting situations like this, and few of them ending well for all involved. I'm happy for the both of you. He looks at her and smiles. I'm glad to see two of my friends finding happiness with one another. Yaoyorozu lets out a heavy sigh of relief, somewhat startling Todoroki. She gives him a thankful smile before leaving over and kissing him on the cheek right below his scar, the action managing to make the stoic boy blush somewhat. What was that for? It's my way of saying thank you for being so supportive of me and Izuku. I'm certain Izuku would feel the same. The two friends look at each other, sharing a smile between them as the rest of their team, comprised of 𝗵𝗃, Sato, Ashido, Jiro, and Kaminari, finally catch up. Hey, I thought you two were supposed to be scouting for trouble. 𝗵𝗃 shouts out, causing the two friends to flinch before Yaoyorozu nervously scratches an invisible itch on her cheek while Todoroki scans the area. This area seems free of trouble for the moment, he says as Yaoyorozu creates her visor, giving the area a thought scanning. I don't detect any living thing in the area. Let's move on to the next location, she says, leaping into the air with Todoroki following. We'll continue to scout ahead. Join us when you can. With that, they take off, leaving the five of them once again. I can see Bakugo pull this crap, but Yamamoto? Kaminari said as they resume their following. I'm starting to wonder just how much those three have been influencing our vice-class republic. She spent an entire month on the move with someone as agile as Midoriya. Of course she'd get used to a pace like that in that time. Jiro said in her friend's defense, watching the two of them fly off, wondering what kind of trouble they had managed to overcome throughout that month. Yeah. And add to that what's happening with Aoyama, it's no surprise she'd want to find this guy sooner rather than later. Sato adds as 𝗵𝗃 sits on his shoulders, earning himself a glare from the bigger student. I'm still reeling from Midoriya biting our heads off earlier. Can't believe how much more tense he's gotten now that he's got a girlfriend. 𝗵𝗃 muses. If you ask me, he should have done more. They chew you out. Sato replies while still glaring at 𝗵𝗃. Wait, he chewed you out? Why? Ashido asks, using her acid to skate backwards as Jiro and Kaminari jog beside her. We were hounding him about the two of them being together, and 𝗵𝗃. Kaminari starts to explain. Put his foot in his mouth. As usual. Sato finishes with a flat tone, giving the smaller student lowbrow look. I resent that remark. Oh wow. Jiro expresses. Ashido smirks at 𝗵𝗃. Wish I got to see that. He glares at her as she sticks her tongue out at him. I guess that talk with Midnight did the trick, Hayamamoto? Jiro says aloud, getting Ashido and Kaminari's attention. I wonder what she said to her? Probably something insightful and legit. He replies with a smirk. No. It was pervy. Hands down. Ashido counters, leading the three of them into a laughing fit, celebrating the memory of their teacher. If she was able to help Yaoyorozu, maybe I should have asked her for advice too. 𝗵𝗃 laments, gripping his fist. Sato eyes the smaller student with a flash of sympathy. It wouldn't have helped. He replies jokingly, earning him a glare. Anyways, the two of them have always been problem solvers. All they need is a hint, and that's it. Sato says, getting the others' attention. If that match taught me anything, it's that the two of them together are a deadly combo. The four other friends nod in agreement as Ashido slides into a crosswalk when a wall of ice suddenly appears beside her with multiple blade-like appendages piercing through it seconds later. More than a few of them nearly skewering the pink girl. Geez. Thanks, Todoroki. She says, sliding away from the ice as Jiro, Kaminari, Sato, and 𝗵𝗃 gathering around the pink girl. Anytime. Todoroki lands in front of the group along with Yaoyorozu, just as the blades rip themselves free of the ice, destroying the wall. Who she saw once the dust settled made Yaoyorozu groan with annoyance, making her hunch her shoulders down. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Standing behind the destroyed ice wall was the death row villain, Moonfish from the training camp attack, and standing beside him was Tesla, his hands coated with electricity. Jiro and Kaminari gasp at the sight of him while Yaoyorozu drops her head forward, the absurdity of his reoccurring attacks getting the better of her. How did you get out this time? Hey, this isn't fun for me either, girly. He shouts back in a comical fashion, making Jiro and the others confused and nervous while Todoroki kept his full attention on Moonfish, well aware of his skill and deadly quirk. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to be beat by a couple of brats? My rep is hanging by a thread at this point. Then maybe you should really consider going straight. Since being a villain hasn't worked out for you thus far. Yeah, like it's that easy. When have you ever heard of a villain in a maximum quirk prison ever getting out? He points to Moonfish. If it weren't for him tearing through the transport, freeing me and distracting the cops. I'd be at one right now being made into a laughingstock. He points towards the students. I'm not about to go out as the man who couldn't take down kid heroes. And this time, a small group of jailbreakers rush out of the buildings behind them hero team, forcing Sado, Ashido, and Mineta to turn and face them. I've brought more than just 2 hardened criminals with me. Wow, dude. Sounds like you're overcompensating. 𝗵𝗲 jabs, stepping past Yaoyorozu with a grin. Our resident badass Creati's got you shaking, huh? 𝗧𝗏 glares at him while Yaoyorozu blinks at him while a pink blush forms on her face. That's kinda sad when our resident idiot charge bolts dunking on you. Jiro adds, joining him, getting an annoyed look for him while 𝗧𝗏 grows angrier. You're so pathetic. It'd be insulting for her to have to beat you a 3rd time. She plugs her earphone jacks into her speakers while 𝗵𝗲 aims his arm at the villain, lighting coding it. So we'll take you down this time. They say together as Yaoyorozu watches with amazement and pride in her friends. In that case, I'll take care of this guy. Todoroki announces, engulfing his left arm in fire. We aren't in a forest this time around, villain. So I don't have to hold back. Searing flesh. Let me have a taste. Moonfish spouts out. We got these losers. You just sit back and relax, Creati. Ashido announces as Sado chomps down on some sugar cubes while Mineta grabs hold of his purple balls. The pink girl gives the other girl a thumbs up and a wink. It's our turn to kick some villain butt. With that, she faces the group of villains coating her arms with a thick layer of her acid. Yaoyorozu smiles, then creates a durable, insulated shield. Very well, everyone. I'll remain here and provide support should you need it. Do your best. With that, the fighting begins. Sado and Ashido rush the villains as Mineta throws his balls, managing to trap a few of them for Sado to lay into while Ashido darts around them, her acid-covered arms adding a burning sting to her attacks. As the 3 of them were charging their opponents, Moonfish lashes out his tooth blades at Yaoyorozu, only for Todoroki to trap them with ice while blasting him with his flames. Moonfish uses his blades to launch himself into the air before the flames reach him. Todoroki doing the same with his ice, forcing the villain further down the street so as to not hinder or risk hurting his friends. 𝗧𝗏, meanwhile, launches a bolt at Yaoyorozu as she had her back towards him. He gets excited as it nears her only for it to stop in midair right before hitting her. What? She turns grinning at him as the bolt zooms right for 𝗵𝗲, the boy drawing it to him. The last time we met, you threatened to kill me and my friends. 𝗵𝗲 says, glaring at 𝗧𝗏 through his visor. You should know. That's never gonna happen. Not while I'm around. Heartbeat surround. Jiro shouts, her earphone jacks carrying her speakers closer to 𝗧𝗏 before blasting him with powerful sound waves. 𝗧𝗏 cries out, dropping to his knees. He looks at her before throwing his free arm at her, blasting another bolt at her, only for it to be redirected back to 𝗵𝗲, surprising the villain. Didn't you hear me? He meets the villain's stunned eyes. You won't threaten them. Not while I'm here. He draws more of the villain's power out of him while Jiro maintains her attack, eventually making 𝗧𝗏 collapse onto his stomach. The 2 heroes ease up their attacks as the villain starts to fall unconscious. The last thing he sees is the angry glare of Jiro, the smirk of 𝗵𝗲, and surprisingly a sad frown from Yaoyorozu. Maybe I should have found a new line of work before crossing. Not far behind him, Moonfish was leaping through the air, growing desperate as Todoroki uses his ice to launch himself straight at the airborne villain, his left fist ready to unleash his flash fire fist. Desperate to avoid getting hit by his flames again, Moonfish aims many of his tooth blades at the hero, launching them when he was closer. Before the blades could skewer him, Todoroki propels himself over them by blasting fire out of his left foot. The move maneuvers him out of the way of the blades while giving him the momentum to connect his attack, mirroring his father during his battle in Kyushu. Flash fire fist, jet kindling. He call out, delivering a devastating punch to Moonfish's nose, the impact shattering the villain's teeth and knocking him out. Todoroki manages to catch the villain before he hits the ground, easing them both to the ground. Just one more. Sado shouts, charging at a villain that had stepped on one of Mineta's balls while wrapping his arms around his body, covering the painful acid burns Ashido left during her initial charge. With a solid hit to the villain's jaw, Sato easily knocks him out, putting an end to their attack. "Aw yeah. Give it up for Team Acid Punch Ball." Ashido cheers as Mineta yells at her at how stupid the name was. Kaminari and Jiro work together to drag Tesla to the other villains, with Todoroki coming up from the rear with Moonfish. As her friends celebrate their victory, Yaoyorozu is on the phone, letting MT Lady know about the jailbreakers they captured while smiling proudly at her classmates. The sun was beginning to set, the warm orange a nice backdrop for Midoriya and his team to enjoy the moment of relative peace while they could. He lands on a roof of a low-level apartment building, glimpsing the setting sun through 2 skyscrapers. A smile appears on his face as memories of their date by the fountain came flooding back, the two able to enjoy each other's company with the soothing sound of the fountain providing a relaxing soundtrack. "Don't get too lost in that head of yours." He blinks as Ojiro lands nearby, a knowing smile on his face. "Pretty difficult to lead when you have your head in the clouds." "Sorry, Tailman." The sunset brought me back to. He hesitates as Shoji joins them, pulling himself over the ledge while Dark Shadow eases Tokoyami down first before setting Koda and Hagakure beside him. "Oh, your date with Yamama, right?" Hagakure blurts out with excitement. "She told us about it while you were asleep on the couch." She brings her hands together and sighs. A sunset walk by a fountain. So romantic. Ojiro gives the invisible girl a nervous smile before looking back at Midoriya. "Sounds like a cherished moment for the both of you." Midoriya nods firmly with a smile. "It is. The two of us enjoying a simple date amongst this disaster." He chuckles. "Even then we thought it was selfish of us to do. It's not a crime to enjoy the simple things in life," Shoji offers. "And given that it's the two of you, sharing a moment like that was well-deserved." "Agreed," Tokoyami says with Koda and Dark Shadow nodding in agreement. Midoriya looks at his team of friends with a shocked expression before letting a nervous smile reappear. The bird-headed boy turns to look back at the street they were previously traversing through. "At the risk of sounding insensitive, but I suggest we resume the search. If we are to return to a state of normalcy, where we can all enjoy simply moments like those." He looks over his shoulder and smirks at the others. "Then we best find and capture our elusive quarry as quickly as possible." With a nod, Dark Shadow wraps his arms around Tokoyami before picking up his other passengers, lifting them all into the air. "Right," Midoriya says as Ojiro and Shoji nod in agreement. The taller hero leaps off the roof, his duplication stretching out to grab the ledge of the next building over, swinging over the road as Ojiro and Midoriya leap from rooftop to rooftop alongside them. Koda looks over his shoulder towards the direction Yue stood. "I wonder how Aoyama and his parents are holding up?" He thinks back to the school festival where he was just as enthusiastic with helping put together their event as the rest of them. Hagakure looks over at her fellow passenger, a bitter reply on her lips when a sudden explosion rocks the street further down. "Is it villains?" she asks, looking to Midoriya who hadn't reacted, suggesting his danger sense didn't go off. "Or likely overzealous anti-hero civilians utilizing dangerous support items." Tokoyami replies. "Either way, there may be people trapped. Let's go." Midoriya lead the charge, jumping to a higher percentage while Ojiro jumps onto his back before leaping into the air, using float to carry them to the burning building. He looks back to see Shoji grabbing onto Tokoyami as he manages to catch up. Tentacle, recon the situation. Anima, coordinate with him and lead any trapped civilians to an exit. On it. Shoji replies as Koda nods. Tsukuyami, invisible girl. Parameter and triage. Leave it to us. She replies as Tokoyami sets down Koda beside Shoji, who had begun surveying the situation. "You ready, Tailman?" he asks as they near the building. Ojiro nods at him with a confident smile. "Ready when you are." He nods before using air force to propel them towards the building. "You go high, I'll go low." With that, he lets go of Midoriya to land on an escape stairway, skillfully and quickly making his way to the ground floor before running inside. "Be ready for anything." Midoriya calls down floating just outside a damaged window where flames were coming from. Tailman indicates with his tail he had heard him before running inside. He looks at the window and flicks an air shot to clear the flames before jumping in. Over the course of 10 minutes, Shoji and Koda would direct Midoriya and Ojiro through the building, Koda's bug and animal friends providing detailed descriptions of the layouts and the people trapped within. Meanwhile, 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝐵 and 𝐎𝐵𝐿 were on the streets a block away, providing aid to those that managed to evacuate the building, the sound of sirens indicating the first responders were on their way. Deku, third door to your left. I see someone hunched over in the living room. Got it. Just then, a sparrow flutters to Koda in a panic. What is it, little friend? He listens to the distressed bird, his eyes widening afterward. Deku, stop. It's a trap. Another explosion rocks the area as the door flies off its hinges, knocking Midoriya through the opposite door across the hall and crashing into the living room. What was that? Ojiro calls out over the line, his hurried footfalls indicating he was making his way to Midoriya. The guy in the room. He's a jailbreaker. Koda explains as Shoji takes a closer look, his eyes widening. And he's got a hostage. Midoriya throws the door off him before crouching. The blast only disoriented him for the moment. I'd hold it right there, Izuku, Midoriya. The hero student growls as his vision returns, putting together that the villain is another hired gun willing to use others to get to him. Unless you want this lovely lady to have a really bad night, you'll come quietly. His eyes recovered. Midoriya glares at the jailbreaker, recognizing him as another Tartarus prisoner. Standing just over 2 meters tall, 7 foot 2 inches, with a dad bod, he wore little clothing or gear aside for cargo shorts and combat boots. His reddish-brown hair was in a mohawk as his hard violet eyes stained sharply at Midoriya. Short fuse. Didn't take you for a team player, Midoriya said, slowly rising to his feet, keeping his hands in view so as not to spook him. This'll be tricky. His quirk, Erupt, lets him shoot molten crystal from anywhere on his body. On top of that, he successfully committed crimes for decades without getting caught. Until a few years ago, where it took the combined efforts of Wash, Yoroimasha, and Gang Orca just to take him down. Do you see me with any backup, kid? Unlike those losers from the League of Villains, I don't need any help to do what I do best. Why do all for one's dirty work then? He asks, his gaze flickering from the villain to the hostage, trying to come up with a way to reach her while stalling for the rest of his friends to act. It's a job with perks attracted. Now quit stalling and get over here. Slowly, Midoriya slowly walks towards him. I've seen the perks all for one gives. They're not worth it. As he approaches, the young hero manages to see 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝐵 poised just outside the window. If you're referring to Nagant, she was a special case. Being the only former hero in Tartarus, there was no way anyone there would trust her. Midoriya glares at the man who kept one arm pointed at him while the other is hovering around the hostage, who sat terrified with pleading eyes at his legs. I'm in position. Midoriya heard Ojiro say of the comms while getting the sense someone just walked past him. Midoriya held Short Fuse's attention. She's far more worthy of trust than All for One. Depends on who you ask, kid. Short Fuse said with a smirk. The hand that was pointed at him began to glow an eerie green. All for One gave me a quirk that'll keep you unconscious until I hand you over to him. Huh. Hope you don't have any loose ends to tie. At that moment, 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐿 had delivered a devastating blow to the villain's groin before grabbing the hostage and dashing past Midoriya. Hostage secure. Take him down, guys. Suddenly, Dark Shadow rips the wall open and grabs Short Fuse, holding him still long enough for Ojiro to swing through the opening and deliver a solid hit to his head. Once he was clear, Midoriya brought his power up to 20% and delivers a roundhouse kick to his jaw, dislocating it and knocking him out all at once. With the villain neutralized, 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝐵 brought him to the police transport that had arrived shortly before, while Midoriya brings both 𝗎𝐻𝐵𝐿 and the hostage to the triage, very much aware his invisible friend was in her birthday suit. Ojiro, with the help of Shoji, Koda, and firefighters that had arrived, combed the rest of the building, shortly declaring it cleared and began putting out the fire, catching it in time to keep it from spreading. As Midoriya and 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝐵 spoke with the police, Koda and 𝗎𝐻𝐵𝐿 worked together to calm the evacuees. His earlier question was still lingering in her mind until Ojiro returns with the other firefighters, with Shoji meeting up with Midoriya to provide his more informed debrief of the incident. Hey, you guys, she says while they step away for the paramedics to tend to the evacuees, standing on the opposite street to wait for their friends to finish. The two boys look at her direction, her gloved hands fiddling with each other. Can we really trust 𝗬𝗄𝐵? After everything he's done? I mean, I wanna obviously. It's just that. I think he deserves a chance to prove himself at least. Right? Koda offers. Trust might be a stretch at this point. Ojiro says. He places a hand on her invisible shoulder and smiles. But I agree with Koda. I have faith in him. Enough to give him the benefit of the doubt without outright trusting him. 𝐒𝐻𝐵 clutches her fists as the other three boys make their way over to them. She gives her friends an invisible smile. Yeah, me too. It was late into the evening. The sound of explosions reverberate through the streets in rapid succession. Bakugo blasts through the air, hell-bent on finding any more villains before they had to turn in for the night. His eagerness made it tough for his team to follow, but they were used to his way of doing things that no one made to complain. 𝗧𝗏 swings below him using his tape while 𝗳𝗏𝗏 easily kept pace from the ground, his engines hardly being pushed. Attached to the back of his armor was one of Uraraka's cables who, along with the now weightless Kirishima, were being dragged along behind him while Azui hops from rooftop to rooftop. It's crazy how bad things have gotten, 𝗧𝗏 says aloud, looking inside the abandoned apartments and vehicles they pass. It's one thing to hear about it, but to actually see it? Indeed. It puts into perspective why many of the heroes walked away. Tragic as it sounds, I now understand their decision to do so. Seeing all this, 𝗳𝗏𝗏 replies, zooming past vehicles and broken building debris as they near an elementary school. Sure, but Deku and Creati saw this and didn't quit. They still haven't. Kirishima adds. True. But it did take its toll on them. Eventually driving Deku to get desperate enough to go out on his own. Azui counters, her argument making him clutch his fist. Damn it. When you put it that way, it makes sense. Still, it pisses me off that those three have to be extra careful now with All for One gunning for them. And we're still no closer to finding that bastard. The teachers and pros will come up with a winning plan. I'm sure of it, Uraraka says as they head for the school. When they do, Deku, 𝗬𝗏𝗏, and Yamamoto won't have to worry about him ever again. Uravity. Remember to use hero names when we're in the field. 𝗳𝗏𝗏 calls out over his shoulder, making her laugh nervously. Bakugo lands on the school with 𝗧𝗏 and Azui, joining him shortly after. Uraraka and Kirishima float over to the building before she releases her quirk's effect. The two land near the edge just as 𝗳𝗏𝗏 leaps up and joins them. Anyway, given Eraserhead's idea, I'm confident they'll formulate a winning strategy in no time. They better hurry the hell up. I'm sick of beating on these weak-ass loser villains. Bakugo shouts out, flexing his stiff fingers. As their group catch their breath, Uraraka stands beside Bakugo. So, what's your plan when we find Shigaraki and the League? Simple. I'm gonna blast them to bits with my howitzer impact cluster. That'll teach them not to mess with us, he says with his arrogant smile on his face. She smiles before looking out over the city, her smile flipping into a frown. So, what do you think of Deku and Creati being together? I couldn't give a crap about that. Whoever they decide to date has nothing to do with me. Really? Even though you three have gotten so much closer? She asks, a little surprised to hear that from him, given the concern she saw he had throughout their time together. The damn nerd needed help with One for All and 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏s was the only other person that knew about it. Just because I train with them, doesn't mean I care about their dating life. The only time it did bug me, he shoots a glare at her, was during that girl thing the two of you were doing. She looks away nervously. Sounds like someone's jealous, 𝗧𝗏 said, butting into their conversation. The two of them turned back to see him and Kirishima smirking at Bakugo while 𝗳𝗏𝗏 and Azui were eyeing Uraraka. You wanna die, weird arms. It's cool, man. Deku got a girlfriend before you. No shame in not being the first of us to get one, Kirishima adds, his own smirk never faltering. I don't give a crap about that kind of thing. Why would I be jealous? Because Deku now has a win over you, 𝗧𝗏 points out. Bakugo goes ballistic as the other two boys laugh aloud while Uraraka, 𝗳𝗏𝗏, and Azui hang back and watch with mixed expressions amongst the three of them. As the three boys argued, a large quake rocked the building. What was that? Uraraka shouts. The shaking stopped only for a giant villain to charge through a building on a direct course towards the school. Both her and 𝐎𝐽𝐽 glare at the villain, recognizing him from their hero debut with Ryukyu's agency. Him again. Finally. Someone to kill. Bakugo says right before blasting off. Wait, great explosion murder god dynamite. Ida says, the hot-tempered hero long gone by the time he finishes. The others around him look at him with exasperation. I can't believe you used his full hero name. 𝗧𝗏 said. Ida growls. Dynamite needs assistance. Just as they were about to follow, 𝐎𝐽𝐽 spots a group of jailbreakers following the giant villain. Ingenium, look behind the giant. More villains. Right then. He looks at Uraraka and 𝐎𝐽𝐽. Go support Dynamite. The three of us will intercept those other villains. On it. Uraraka uses zero gravity on herself and 𝐎𝐽𝐽, who uses her tongue to send them flying through the air after Bakugo. Ida looks at Kirishima and 𝗧𝗏. Hop on, Red Riot. He says, bending down enough for Kirishima to jump on his back, revving up his engines. Let's go, Cellophane. With that, he leaps off the building with 𝗧𝗏 swinging close behind him. Far into the distance, past the giant villain and those following him, shrouded in the darkness of the night, a giant fortress could barely be seen slowly making its way towards UA High School. Let's see, I'll need this. Oh, that's right. Thank you, Mother. Now what else? Oh, this is so cute. I wonder what Izuku will say when he sees me wearing this. The sudden appearance of Dark Might and his floating fortress pushed everyone to the brink of exhaustion. But by working together, the heroes of Japan were able to defeat the imposter and put a stop to his plans. With the immediate threat taken care of, Class A returned to their dorms where All Might, Tsukachi, and Principal Nizu explained the final battle plan they came up with. Afterward, they were instructed to gather what they needed for a few days' stay at their new base of operations they called Troy, a location that will be a cornerstone of their strategy. Once the three of them left, Yaoyorozu excused herself after giving Midoriya another kiss on the cheek, needing the time to get her things together. Though it would be for a short time, she wasn't used to pacing light. The previous month being an exception due to various reasons. She held up a shirt that read, "Check out these cannons," written across the stomach with two cannons printed on the chest in a crisscross position. An impulse by during her work study with Majestic a few days after she had spoken with Ms. Midnight, taking her double-take advice to heart. Her smile turned sad, recalling the laughing fit 𝗃𝗃 had while Majestic grinned at her with a thumbs up. She even sent Ms. Midnight a picture of her trying it on, which she replied right away with a seductive image, praising her boldness. Majestic. Midnight. I hope I'm living up to the expectations you both had of me. A knock on her door brings her back. She quickly puts the shirt in her bag before heading for the door, the knocking continuing. Just a second, she says. Opening the door, she expects to see Midoriya or Ishido, but it was Bakugo that met her surprised look. Katsuki? What is it? We need to talk. The next thing she knew, Bakugo was leading her to the roof of their dorm building, not saying a word throughout the short walk there. Throwing open the roof entrance door, the two of them quickly spot the building they were packing to move into. Troy bared a similar design to the dorms, but with rather sophisticated additions that would tip the odds in their favor when the final battle begins. They stand in the middle of the roof for a few silent moments before she looks to him. What did you want to talk about, Katsuki? He keeps his gaze on the building, still visible despite the late hour. That plan of theirs, what's your take on it? She blinks before looking at the distant building as well. It has merit. All things considered, it's most likely our best chance to defeat All for One, Shigaraki, and the League. Not surprising, given it was Mr. Aizawa and the principal's plan. But you see it too, don't you? The fatal flaw that could make or break this fight. She wraps her arms around herself, an involuntary response as she nods. Having me so close to Shigaraki has a high chance of drastically shifting the flow. Should he decide to target me instead? She grips her arms tightly, regardless of which personality is in control. All for One may feel it's easier to go after your quirk first and use it against Deku. In every way possible, he states, eyeing her, recognizing she had thought of the same thing. On the other hand, Shigaraki will likely outright kill you, with or without taking your quirk. The two friends stood in silent contemplation as both scenarios play out in their minds, the ultimate outcome being a crippling blow to Midoriya, and then the world. She suddenly smacks her cheeks, clearing her mind and snapping her out of her growing worry. Bakugo allows a smirk to appear on his face as she takes a deep breath, flashing him a smile once she was calmer. I appreciate your concern, Katsuki. I'm really flattered you came to talk to me about this. Huh. That's not what's happening, moron. I just wanted to make sure you understand what the score is before we kick their asses. He lifts his hand to his face, causing tiny explosions on his palm while grinding like a lunatic at Troy. I'll be blasting Shigaraki to a million pieces. And I don't want anyone ending up as collateral damage. Despite his aggressive boosting, Yaoyorozu was completely relaxed, knowing full well that Bakugo truly is concerned for not just her safety, but everyone's and using this persona to cover it. But, as sharp as he is, even Bakugo can be taken by surprise, as she leans in towards him and kisses his cheek. Without even thinking he was on the other side of the roof, his hand raised to repel any threats as his face turns deep red. Gah! What the hell was that for? You've been a wonderful friend to me ever since the three of you brought me into the fold. You helped me get stronger and have even supported me this entire time. She lifts her hand to her chest, placing it over her heart. I wanted to show you just how much it all means to me. Bakugo growls, his face still a deep red. That being the first time a girl's ever managed to plant a kiss on him before. Damn it, Yamamoto. Save that crap for the damn nerd, not me. Got it. He shouts before stomping off, ignoring the giggle she gave in response. Upon reaching the door, he stops. Hey. He looks over his shoulder to meet her eyes, his fierce glare losing some of its bite as the blush still covers his face. I'll keep that bastard off both you and Deku. You can count on that. She gives him a confident smile and nods. He leaves without another word. Her smile slowly turns into a worried frown as her arms return to hugging herself, the weight of the coming battle coming into clarity. She takes another breath as a few fearful tears roll down her cheeks, looking up at the moon shining above her. Her mind pulling memories from her subconscious in an attempt to ease her fears, with the final thought that came to her before returning to her room taking her by surprise. I wonder what Toga will say when she finds out about me and Izuku? The next day, after the students bid farewell to their friends and families, Midoriya and Yaoyorozu giving both Eri and Kota hugs before doing the same with their parents, they were brought to Troy. Midoriya had just put the last of his clothes away and was looking out his balcony at the ruins of the city beyond them. It was then he spots Uraraka standing on the edge of the cliff they were on. Taking this chance, he activates One for All and leaps down, eager to speak to her. As he did, Yaoyorozu was in the kitchen conversing with the other girls while Sato, Ida, and Ujiro started on prepping their dinner. Hey, there's Midoriya now, Jiro says, her earphone jack pointing out the window at the two conversing friends. Oh, better get out there before Ochako steals your man, Yamamoto. Ashido says teasingly. Don't even joke about that, Mina. It was hard for the both of us to come to terms with our rivalry. Yeah. Sure. Whatever. Now, get out there. She replies, practically pushing the other girl towards the front door. Before she could protest again, she met Jiro's eyes telling her the same thing, the underlining reason flashing within their expressions. Taking the hint, Yaoyorozu turns and leaves the building, making her way to her Midoriya and Uraraka while the other girls along with Mineta, Kaminari, Shiro, and Kirishima watching as she goes. At the sound of her approach, the two friends look over their shoulders and smile at her. I hope I'm not intruding. Uraraka smiles. Of course not. The two girls share a hug before Yaoyorozu steps to Midoriya's other side, joining them in their silent observation of the city. Finally, Midoriya speaks up after clutching his fists. The final battle, the one that'll decide the fate of the entire world, is only days away now. Uraraka lets out a heavy sigh as her shoulders sag. Wow, that's a lot to take in when you say it like that. Indeed. Yaoyorozu replies, smiling at her friend. Nevertheless, we will overcome their threat. She looks at Midoriya with a loving gaze. Together. He smiles back at her, grabbing her hand. Together. Uraraka agrees with a nod, turning to leave afterward. Uraraka. She turns to look at Midoriya as he continues. I I know what that girl thing the two of you were dealing with was. She flinches before looking away with a nervous smile. You do, huh? Yeah, that wasn't one of my better moments. She says with a nervous laugh. Uraraka, you've been there for me since the moment I first arrived at UA. I really wish there was a way for all of us to get what we want, but it's okay, Deku. Really, that's just how stuff like this works. I'm not bitter about it, honest. She says before walking up to him and giving him a tight hug, one that was 𝗵𝗃𝗄 the regret she had for not taking her shot when she had the chance. After a moment of hesitation, he returns the hug, his own holding the sadness and frustration over his inability to pick up on her affections too late. He doesn't regret choosing Yaoyorozu. His regret was that Uraraka had to pay for that choice. She releases her hold, causing him to release his, allowing her to step away from him, smiling brightly. I really am happy for the both of you. And don't worry, I'll find the person for me someday. Until then. She turns towards the windows, spotting their classmates gawking at them. I have our friends. With a wave she leaves, leaving Midoriya and Yaoyorozu relatively alone. The two of them smile at each totter before sitting down on the edge of the cliff, their legs dangling over the edge as Yaoyorozu lays her head on his shoulder while he wraps his arm around her waist. 𝐻𝐵 told me you guys ran into another hired gun. Short fuse, wasn't it? He wasn't ready for her, ultimate attack, so to speak. She giggles. Kaminari said you had another run-in with Tesla? Even he found the whole thing ridiculous. Thankfully, Kaminari and Jiro were able to handle him this time. She looks at him. Everyone told me to sit back and let them handle the jailbreakers. As they spoke, Ashido and 𝗵𝗃 were barely containing their excitement at seeing them together, with Jiro failing to keep a light blush from appearing on her face, taking a 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝐽𝐵 glance at Kaminari. Midoriya turns to look Yaoyorozu in the eyes, the two of them smiling lovingly. A lot has happened since that day out, he said, reminiscing about their first fight with the villain with the electric quirk. Both with the League and with us. She replies, recalling that intense moment she had saved Midoriya, as well as her two encounters with Himiko Toga. It's funny. As bleak as things have been since my fight with Shigaraki, this last month with you has been amazing. He thinks back to the two of them standing their ground against Nana Shimura, within One for All, and the night they professed their love for each other. It's those wonderful moments throughout this dark time that shine out the brightest. She thinks back to their date by the fountain, kissing his cheek and Midoriya outrunning a fired sniper round to save her. As the two of them were recalling their romantic adventure, they were slowly leaning closer to each other, eventually getting so close their lips were nearly touching. Inside, Ashido and 𝗵𝗃 were holding each other, their cheeks pressed against each other as they watched in anticipation for the moment of truth. Are those two still outside? Ida asks while making his way to the front door. We need to get our dinner ready, and those two are suppose. Suddenly 𝗵𝗃, Ashido and Jiro were on him, covering his mouth while grabbing his arms and legs in a comical fashion, keeping the class rep from moving as they all shush him. Just then Mineta and Kaminari groan in jealousy as Zero and Kirishima cheer in prideful joy. Ida and the girls whip their eyes towards the window and blush profusely at the sight of Midoriya and Yaoyorozu finally sharing their first real kiss. Most of their friends turn away from their intimate moment as the three girls simultaneously gush over the kiss while keeping the rather angry Ida from ruining their moment. Standing by the kitchen with warm smiles for their two friends Todoroki, Uraraka, and Azui watch as they express the love they have for one another in the purest way they could. Leaning against the wall behind everyone, Bakugo allows a smirk to cross his face. About time. Idiot. Destruction begets creation. Spoiler warning for manga ending. Midoriya stood stunned with Yaoyorozu at his side, the two of them having spotted Aoyama standing in the middle of a parking lot not too far from UA. They exchange a confused look before making their way to him, the sound of their approach causing him to turn and greet them. I appreciate you coming, he says to both of them, his face a nervous wreck. Aoyama? Why are you here? Midoriya asks. We thought you were at the police station. Yaoyorozu follows up with. My parents' lawyer got me released for the moment. That's wonderful, said Yaoyorozu cheerfully. I'll go tell the others. Midoriya turns to leave. You can join one of our search parties. Wait, Aoyama says, stopping the other boy. I think we should talk aloud first. Just the three of us. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu give him an odd look as he continues. It's kind of funny. The courts are still in session, even though everything is crumbling. Maybe people are clinging to the old ways as long as they can before this way of life ends. What are you saying? Midoriya asks, turning back to face him as Yaoyorozu nervously brings a hand to her chest. Would you like me to tell you both All for One's true goal? Aoyama says before going into the state of the world, how the monetary value is as bad as it was during the Great Depression, how countries will abandon each other to preserve themselves, create anarchy and chaos that will provide him with the opportunity to take control of the entire world and truly be known as the Demon Lord. I don't get why you're telling us this right now, Aoyama. Midoriya says with worry in his voice as Yaoyorozu steps closer to him, so their shoulders were touching. A single terrible event is all it would take. Our world will fall off balance. You make it sound like it's inevitable. Yaoyorozu speaks up. But people the world over wouldn't allow that to happen. Besides, we're still here defending Japan. Midoriya states, the two of them wearing stern expressions on their faces. I know. That's why you're here. This can't be allowed to keep going. Aoyama says, his face shifting to sheer terror. I'm sorry. I had no choice. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu look up with fear and anger. I want to protect Papa and Mama. Floating behind him was the imposing figure of All for One, wearing a new life support mask that resembles a dark crown. No, you didn't. Midoriya shouts, activating One for All as he holds a frightened Yaoyorozu. Excellent job, my conniving little star. All for One says while applauding as Aoyama cries below him. I imagine you're scared to betray your friends. It can be so distressing to have someone put their faith in you. Midoriya growls at All for One while Yaoyorozu clings to him, the amount of fear she holds too much to bear. Your fortitude is impressive. And the speech about my ultimate goal was amiable. He finishes his mock clapping. If not entirely accurate. Did your mommy and daddy explain that? They said things would be better. You promised we'd have happy lives in your new world. We trusted you. Midoriya shouts as Yaoyorozu looks at Aoyama with tears in her eyes. Distressing? You can't imagine, dear uncle. Aoyama replies. He suddenly turns around and fires his naval laser at All for One. I won't betray my friends. The villain floats there with the only damage he sustained from the surprise attack was to his clothes. You ungrateful worm. Your acting was crazy realistic, Aoyama. Midoriya said as he and Yaoyorozu stood beside him, the facade of fear gone, replaced with righteous fury. Indeed. It literally brought me to tears. Well done. She replies. I had to make sure it as believable or we'd never get him to come. But you two? Those were a tour de force. No. We were just following your lead. Yaoyorozu replies. Your tears really pushed it over the edge. Well, to be honest, that's not all. Aoyama explains, so terrified his body was shaking. I may have also wet myself. Yaoyorozu couldn't help but let a small snicker escape, causing him to force a quick glare at her. You did great. Thank you. Midoriya says, still glaring at All for One. For Mama and Papa's safety. And for the sake of everyone else. Me included. The three of them look up and glare at the villain. I will stand up and fight you, All for One. How disappointing. All for One says nonchalantly, puzzled the Aoyamas were able to trick him. He focuses his attention on Midoriya and Yaoyorozu, tearing his blazer off. Below him, many blobs of sludge appear from out of nowhere. They slowly open up to reveal Shigaraki, Dabi, Toga, the Nomu, and many other villains and jailbreakers as he explains how the three of them are alone with none of the heroes close enough to help them. I'm afraid it's already too late for you. That's what you think. Aoyama challenges. A warp gate suddenly appears behind the three hero students, making All for One believe it was Kurogeru. But to his surprise, Momo was the one to appear. More warp gates appear as Endeavor, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and many other heroes come through them. Papa and Mama told me this too. There's something you would hate more than anything. And that's the world finding out that Japan isn't finished yet. To show them we haven't stopped twinkling yet. Inspiring them to unity and rage against you. That's why today, he pumps his arms as the heroes gather around him, is the day you're defeated. Ahaha. Look who's in the spotlight now. Momo shouts as more heroes and students pour out of the warp gates. The villains begin charging at them as Shigaraki attempts to touch the ground, the action making Yaoyorozu and Midoriya flinch. But just before he touches down, he stops, as if something was staying his hand. He looks to his side. "Dabi. Not now, boss man. I'm spoken for." He calls back, rushing forward with his blue flames flaring up around his hand. He grins at Endeavor as they rush towards each other. "Didn't think you'd be here for me to slaughter. Dear old dad. Before we start, how about I cremate your friends?" He throws his hand out, blasting a wave of fire, only for a wall of ice to rush past, extinguishing it. Dabi laughs as Todoroki appears out of Warp Gate clutching his right hand. "No way am I going to allow that. Not today, brother." "Hey there, Shoto." Before he or the other villains could continue their charge, System Troy activates, quickly creating makeshift cages for the various league members and the villains nearest them, trapping them. Rockets activate just as Momo creates more warp gates behind them. "Surprised ya, didn't I?" Some of the traps begin entering as the heroes and students rush them, pushing them through once they reach them. "Put some muscle into it, heroes." Some of them start to break open, but the heroes fought on and pushed them through, leaving only the last two. Uraraka uses her quirk to make the container that held Himiko Toga weightless, allowing her team to push in through. However, a Nomu within was able to smash a part of it open, revealing a desperate Toga. "There you are," she says, spotting Yaoyorozu next to another warp gate near the container that held Shigaraki within. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 shouts, blasting at the container as the heroes on their team work together to push it. "Right," he replies, about to add his strength to the effort. But something within him flares up. It wasn't danger sense, but a feeling within his heart that urges him to look back at Yaoyorozu. She had just entered through a warp gate meant to take her to her assigned station when his eyes dilate at seeing one of Toga's syringes quickly approaching her. Without even thinking, he closes the distance and catches it, startling both Yaoyorozu and Toga. "Pull!" Toga shouts to the Nomu. It grabs the line and yanks back, pulling the surprised hero through the gate right before it closes. Yaoyorozu shouts, having to step through before the gate closes. "Damn it." She reaches up to her earpiece. "Genist. Eraser. We have a problem." "What is it?" Genist replies. "It's Deku." Bakugo answers, landing beside Best Genist as the container that held Shigaraki crumbles away. They pulled a fast one. "Deku's gone." "What happened?" "It was Toga. She tried to grab me, but Deku intercepted and got pulled through the portal after her." Yaoyorozu explains, looking out towards Okudo Island, where they had sent Himiko to. "This is bad. No time to dwell on that." She looks around to see 𝗵𝗃𝗃 quickly grabbing her tools before smirking at her. "We need those materials right away, Creati." Yaoyorozu sighs heavily before creating the various materials and components needed to make repairs alongside 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃. "You can count on me." On the battlefield above them, Genist had just finished explaining the coffin in the sky to Shigaraki as he fends off attacks from him and the other heroes. "Is that right?" He replies, looking down towards the ground and spotting Yaoyorozu with search. His smirk tips off Bakugo. He's targeting her. "Eraser!" He shouts just as Shigaraki propels himself towards the ground. Mirko and Nijire intercept him, slowing him down enough for Genist to wrap a cable around his body. He touches it, but nothing happens. He growls in frustration before looking over his shoulder to see Aizawa kneeling beside the sitting Momo, as Manuel uses his water quirk to keep the hero course student's eyes from drying out. What's the matter? Is the final boss having trouble using his powers?" He shouts out, infuriating the villain. Genist and Bakugo keep up the assault, providing Mirko an opening. Shigaraki easily dodges it, twisting his body around to suddenly reveal his arm, quickly morphing into multiple hands. "Hey, Dynamite! What the hell is he doing now?" Mirko shouts out, open for an attack. "I don't know. This is..." Suddenly, his grotesque limb of hands shoots towards her, knocking her out of the air and damaging her artificial limbs. The attack took everyone by surprise. "I still can't believe I used to think you were cool. But you turned out to be another disappointment." Shigaraki says, glaring at the heroes with a hard glare. Erase her head. His attack knocks 𝗵𝗃𝗲 away, his hands multiplying rapidly until they nearly cover most of the field. As the battle rages on, Yaoyorozu works diligently to help supply the support team with repairs, taking quick stack breaks to replenish her lipids. She grew frustrated as more and more of the blocks were being destroyed and replaced in a faster rate than they anticipated, leading her to conclude he was trying to break through the platform and get to her. She glares up as her frustration and guilt grew with every crash and bolt that could be heard. This is 𝗵𝗃𝗲. She gasps in surprise, looking to her earpiece. Katsuki? How did you? We all know he's gunning for you right now. And knowing you, you're blaming yourself. She grunts in response to being called out. Listen, Vice Rep. You re his target, but you're also the one keeping him here. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 says while blasting at the thousands of hands around him, the sound of the others doing the same coming through the earpiece. So stop thinking this is all on you too and keep giving us ground to stand on. She looks around the room, seeing the faces of those around her who are listening and agree with the brash hero. This brings her back for her pit of guilt and redoubles her efforts to help stop Shigaraki. Thank you, Katsuki. As the battle continues on above them, the conflicts that took place across Japan are also growing more intense. In Kamino Ward, Todoroki, Ida, and Endeavor's sidekicks took on 𝗵𝗲𝗿, while their team fought off villains and Momo that had come along. There, 𝗵𝗲𝗿 tells his little brother how he had managed to survive nearly getting burned to death at Sekoto Peak. The rage and hatred he felt towards their father, pushing him to grow stronger regardless of the burns he could no longer feel. Toya, I can see how similar we are when it comes to feelings towards Dad. But as he thought that he recalls his talk with Yaoyorozu and her vouching for his attempts at being better. As bad as he was, at least he never killed anyone. Not long after that, 𝗵𝗲𝗿 attacks, dominating the fight up until Todoroki uses his newest move, Flash Fire Fist, Phosphor in conjunction with ultimate move, Great Glacial Aegir. His attacks land, seemingly defeating his older brother. Word spread of this victory, causing every one of his friends to celebrate. In the ruins of Gunga Villa, Endeavor and Hawks engage 𝗷_1's original body as the rest of their team engage the villains below them, with Jiro and Tokoyami providing support. Hawks had just saved the two students from getting killed by a devastating attack from 𝗷_1. I've been training to fight villains all this time, but I didn't know it would feel like this. She thinks to herself as Tokoyami glides around, keeping their distance from 𝗷_1. He's pure evil. Every cell in my body is on edge. She grips Tokoyami's cloak, her body shaking with fear. Midoriya. Yaoyorozu. Aoyama. I can't believe it. You've been facing this the entire time? You're trembling. 𝗷_1 says while keeping Hawks at bay. Pitiful child. You've been training in the classroom. But this is real life. He unleashes a devastating attack on them, and even though Hawks diverts it, the attack still injures the two students, resulting in Jiro losing an earphone jack. Their fight continues until Endeavor returns, greatly injured but still strong enough to push 𝗷_1 enough to keep him from fighting back, ultimately wounding him gravely using his prominence burn. Back at the coffin in the sky, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 argues with Shigaraki regarding progress and which sides is the more efficient course. Howitzer Impact Cluster. He rockets towards Shigaraki, unleashing his strongest attack. The impact was enough to rock the coffin and make more than a few people nervous. Despite the overwhelming power behind the attack, Shigaraki easily tanks it, crushing the boy's arm before tossing him aside. The other heroes charge at him as his hands keep them at bay as he slowly approaches 𝗵𝗃𝗲. If there is anything about you that I find interesting, it's that you are the closest person to Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yaoyorozu. And their quirks. One for all and creation. He reaches him, destroys his gear, and holds him aloft. Compared to those two, you're nothing but garbage. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 glares at him, just before Nijire and Tamaki jump into action, working together with Mirio to get 𝗵𝗃𝗲 away from Shigaraki and to Ginist. As the three of them work together to slow him down, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 watches while Ginist patches him up, learning his fight patterns. Down below, Hatsum and Powerloader are hard at work while Yaoyorozu and 𝗵𝗵𝗲𝗄 continue to produce materials. She struggles to maintain her creations after listening to what Shigaraki said through the comms 𝗵𝗃𝗲 kept open. That's not true, Katsuki. It's like Uraraka said, having a special quirk doesn't make you special. You're not garbage. 𝗧𝗧𝗏. She looks at 𝗬𝗵𝗲. Keep cheering for those still fighting. But not at the cost of your duty. He offers her a calm smile. Leave Shigaraki in their capable hands. She smiles at him and nods. Yes, sir? The big three managed to stall Shigaraki long enough for Tamaki to manifest his vast hybrid, plasma cannon, tearing through his hands and the electric barrier. Sadly, it wasn't enough as Shigaraki grows more hands taunting the heroes and their attempts to stop him. Slowly, Bakugo gets to his feet and makes his way towards Shigaraki. Help the others, he says weakly to 𝗀𝗎 as he bleeds from his many wounds. Shigaraki glares at him as 𝗀𝗎 tries to stop him. Suddenly, in a burst of speed, Bakugo was gone, reappearing in front of Shigaraki. He blasts his cluster attack at him, shaking the villain before appearing a few meters away, surprising everyone. Shigaraki swings at him, but the boy dodges, suddenly reappearing behind him. Fighting through the pain, watching your opponent for a tell, you're an old pro at this sort of thing, aren't you? Bakugo thinks to himself, his eyes resembling stars. A sudden shock from her hand forces Yaoyorozu to look up at where she believes Bakugo was, recalling what Yoichi had said regarding Midoriya transferring one for all to Bakugo on Nabu Island. Katsuki don't. Hey, Izuku Momo, can I still catch up to you two? I'll obliterate you. Shigaraki turns and throws his grotesque limb at the hero as the others try and reach him. Sadly, the attack connects, the force of the impact sending everyone flying. Bakugo crashes to the ground, tumbling to a stop before 𝗀𝗎 reaches him. Bakugo. 𝗀𝗎 reaches the boy, ready to help him. Hang in there. This might hurt, but you'll be... He reaches for Bakugo's injured chest and freezes. His eyes widen in disbelief and horror as the thunder rolls in. Bring with it the rain. His heart. Monoma and Manuel stare in disbelief as Aizawa shouts out in anger. Below, Yaoyorozu stares up in shock, falling to her knees as Lunch Rush reaches her, catching the distraught girl before she collapses completely. No, Akatsuki. She tries to run off, but Lunch Rush stops her. Let me go. I have to help him. I can't stay here and let him. 𝗵𝗃 appears and slaps her across the face, knocking her out of her emotional turmoil. Yaoyorozu meets the other girl's stern glare as she calms down. Leave now and all his efforts will have been for nothing. And Midoriya won't have any ground to stand on when he arrives. Yaoyorozu shakes with hurt and frustration, her stare turning into a glare. It's okay, Yamamoto. 𝗵𝗲𝗎 manages to say through the comms, getting their attention. 𝗬𝗎 and 𝐻𝗧𝗏 are working to keep Bakugo alive. lemillion and 𝗵𝗃𝗀 are keeping Shigaraki back. We haven't lost yet. So don't you go running off just yet. Okay? As she calms down, 𝗵𝗃 punches her in the shoulder before going back to work. After a deep breath, Yaoyorozu resumes her part in the plan as Lunch Rush brings her some more food. As she eats, Yaoyorozu and the others around her suddenly hear the fight drastically change as Shigaraki takes on another form and sends 𝗵𝗃𝗀, Tamaki, and 𝗵𝗏𝗏 flying, leaving the untouchable Mirio be. He marches towards Bakugo, his rage towards the boy's familiar eyes clouding his mind from going after her. Everyone. I'm opening the barrier. Hold on for 2 more seconds. Mandalay announces through her telepathy before doing so. Yaoyorozu looks up in both hope and dread as 𝗀𝗎 says through the comms that was too long. lemillion. She shouts. Desperation in her voice urges him to act, recalling the times he played this practical joke on Night Eye, Eri, and even Yaoyorozu. He dips below the ground before reappearing between 𝗀𝗎 and Shigaraki with his butt pointed towards the villain. Here's a peach for ya. Shigaraki stops in his tracks and looks at Mirio with a look of confusion. That was more than enough. He looks over his shoulder and sees Midoriya, posed to launch himself at the villain. The next second, he rockets down, kicking Shigaraki so hard he gets knocked into the air, tumbling around like a rag doll before crashing into the reactivated barrier. I'm sorry it took me so long, he says, sliding to a stop beside Mirio. Is everyone He starts to ask before looking back. And spotting Bakugo. He begins to breath quickly on the verge of hyperventilating as he takes in the states of the other heroes. Casey, do you want to tell him why you're late? I'm sure you have an excuse. Shigaraki says, emerging from the dust cloud his bouncing around created. Toga's the one to blame, right? Izuku Midoriya? He continues to taunt him as Midoriya slowly turns to face the villain, his rage exploding and causing his quirks to react violently. He glares at Shigaraki with blue waves of energy over his eyes as tendrils of black whips sprout out his mouth. Shigaraki watches with barely contained excitement, recalling what happened during their last fight when Midoriya got angry. I hope you like the present. Sorry I didn't wrap it up for you. Calm down, Izuku. Please. His eyes widen at the sound of Yaoyorozu through his earpiece. She figured he was here when Mandalay reactivated the barrier, fearing he would go into a rage once he saw Bakugo. I know about Katsuki, but 𝗏𝗏 is keeping him alive. We haven't lost him yet. She right, Deku. We haven't lost anything yet. 𝗵𝗲 adds, appearing in front of Midoriya and earning him a glare from Shigaraki. I know you're feeling super guilty, but stay strong. That's what he wants. He's trying to turn you against yourself. We're okay though. Tamaki and the others are still breathing. Trust in 𝗏𝗏. He'll bring Katsuki back. We have to trust him. Yaoyorozu says, kneeling down as tears stream from her eyes. She looks up to see the vestige of Nana Shimura floating beside her, using her connection to One for All to appear before her. That's the mindset you need to battle with. We haven't lost a single thing that can't be regained yet, and we're not giving up this fight. You're trying to fill his head with delusions. Shigaraki says, that's called running away from reality. Maybe you're forgetting we're heroes. Mirio shouts before glaring at the villain. If we don't keep fighting and chasing our ideal futures, then who's gonna make sure they become reality? Midoriya begins to calm down, recalling an interview All Might had that spoke about a hero's job is to make his promises come true, what the American pilot told him about Star and Stripe's faith in them, and everyone from Banjo to Bakugo telling him to control his anger and use it. You can do this, Izuku. I believe in you. Yaoyorozu said, her words calming him down instantly, the raging storm of smokescreen and black whip dissipating. He takes a breath while pounding his chest in an attempt to steady his heart. You're right, 𝗵𝗲. Momo. I'm sorry. Save you apologies for after we've won this, hero. 𝗵𝗲 replies with a smirk. Yaoyorozu smiles up towards Midoriya before turning to Nana. She nods while placing her hand on the student's shoulder. Stay strong, Momo. Yes, ma'am. She replies as Nana returns to Midoriya. I'm not a ma'am. Yaoyorozu blinks before looking at 𝗏𝗏, giving her the stink eye. I may be older than you, but not by that much. Yaoyorozu smiles nervously at her as Midoriya and Shigaraki begin their fight. Midoriya manages to control the flow thanks to the final quirk within One for All, Gear Shift, which alters the speed of his body, regardless of inertia. The coffin in the sky rocks around through their clash with Yaoyorozu, and her team struggle to keep up repairs throughout. Finally, after a devastating blow, Shigaraki begins to writhe in pain as they fall from the air towards the repaired battleground. A warp gate appears behind Aizawa. He looks back to see Present Mike fall through it. Yamada? Moments after, another gate appears with a flood of twice doubles pouring out of it. Despite their efforts, Aizawa and Manuel are unable to keep the twice from knocking Momo to the floor, breaking his eye's contact with Shigaraki and allowing him to use his quirks again. A massive explosion rings out from the mangled body of Shigaraki before they land. The explosion disables the field nearest to him as he takes on a new form, seemingly molting his skin. What did you want? To have another chat at the mall? Shigaraki says, looking at the paralyzed Midoriya. Newsflash, hero. I'm your villain. As the two of them remain still, struggling with their own problems to be the first to move again, Mandalay announces their systems have been hacked, resulting in their hovering system to be deactivated. Nothing's working. Everyone needs to evacuate now. I need to stop the coffin from falling, or Momo and the others will die. Suddenly, Kurogiri appears beside Shigaraki. On top of that, I need to keep Shigaraki from escaping, which means I need to watch Kurogiri. He thinks, wondering what had happened at Central Hospital. As he eyes the two villains struggling to breath from the backlash of using Gear Shift, they widen upon spotting the last three people exit the warp gate the twice copies came out of. Uravity. Floppy. Does that mean the twice with them is Himiko Toga? He watches as Toga lands on the pile of twice copies while Uraraka uses her quirk on her and 𝐎𝐽𝐽𝐫. Toga spots Midoriya and creates a mountain of twice clones to carry her to the offline section of the field with the two heroes close behind. "Where is she?" Toga shouts. She lands near Shigaraki and glares at Midoriya while Uraraka and 𝐎𝐽𝐽𝐫 land just behind the two villains, extremely weary of being so close to Shigaraki. "Where's Yamamoto?" Toga? Yaoyorozu repeats, having heard Midoriya say her name through the comms. She was in the middle of evacuating with the others when she had heard him mention the villain. She glances at her arm where Toga had cut her before gripping her fist and hardening her eyes. She turns away from the group and runs down a hallway that leads to an exit. As she nears it, the coffin in the sky suddenly corrects itself, making her stagger a bit. Once she reaches the exit, Yaoyorozu spots Gentle Criminal holding up the floating coffin all by himself. "A pink aura," she says, recalling what Midoriya told her the night they admitted their feelings for each other. Gentle looks up and spots Yaoyorozu. "Young lady, go back inside. It's far too dangerous out here." "I can't." She leaps from the exit and activates her hover shoes, startling the elder man. "I have to help Izuku," she screams before rocketing off. "Izuku? Does she mean Izuku Midoriya?" He smirks. "Well then, by all means, lass. Be on your way." His expression softens. "Don't let an old fool like me keep you from those you love." Yaoyorozu quickly reaches the top of the coffin and spots her friends and enemies gathered near a post for the electric barrier. "Himiko Toga," she shouts, drawing their attention despite Midoriya and Shigaraki still having trouble moving. She notices Toga's happy eyes, watching her as she lands close to Ginest and Bakugo, quickly creating medical supplies and medicines for him. "Please pull through, Katsuki. We still need you," she says, sparing her friend a sad look before hovering away, ignoring Ginest's protests. She lands beside Midoriya, her eyes never drifting away from Toga. "How kind of you to join us here," Shigaraki says with a sickening grin. "Now I'll know for sure you're dead." He slowly reaches for the ground, making everyone, including Toga, shout for him to stop, with 𝐎𝐽𝐽𝐫 and Yaoyorozu moving to stop him. Just before his hand touches the ground, it's shot off his wrist by an indigo and pink sniper bullet. Another round hits the villain in the head as both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu look towards the direction the bullets came from, relief and amazement on their faces. "Lady Nagant," Yaoyorozu says aloud. Shigaraki tries to use his other hand, but a third bullet does the same thing, shooting it right off his wrist. "Wait, Tomura. Please." Shigaraki looks to his side to see Toga looking at him with pleading eyes as more of her twice appearance melts away. "I want to talk to her. Just one more time. Please, Tomura." Yaoyorozu shares a look with Midoriya, the two of them managing to come to the same conclusion. Shigaraki stares at Toga for a moment, recalling what he had said to Dr. Garaki when they were brought to his lab after the League's first encounter with Gigantomachia. His goal is to destroy everything, but there was plenty room for his allies' desires. "One convo, but don't take all day," he finally says, causing Toga to smile behind her twice disguise. "Thank you, Tomura," she replies, turning to meet the hard looks of Yaoyorozu and Uraraka, oblivious to the shocked looks they were getting from 𝐎𝐽𝐽𝐫 and Midoriya. He shakes off the surprise as Shigaraki looks back at him. The hero student rushes forward, grabbing the villain and getting him off of the coffin in the sky, taking him someplace where there was no bystanders. As they flew through the sky, Kirigiri starts to act strange while at the same time, Aizawa and Present Mike are both knocked off the roof of the power generator room and began to fall when the villain appears and warps them away. As that was going on, Toga had been keeping her eyes on Yaoyorozu, not once blinking. "So, you and Izuku, huh?" "That's correct." She creates a metal staff, taking up the same stance she used the last time they fought. "Are you mad?" "Not really." She creates two twice copies who stand before Uraraka and 𝐎𝐽𝐽𝐫 while she pulls out a knife. "Not as much as I thought I would be." With the rain falling around them and the wind buffering against their bodies, the six of them throw themselves at their opponents and begin their clash. 20 minutes earlier, on the island, Midoriya lets go of the line as he slides through before it closes, leaving him stranded. "Deku?" Uraraka says. "Weren't you supposed to be with Shigaraki?" "Toga tried to grab Creati and drag me here instead." He reaches up to his earpiece. Eraserhead. I'm on Okudo Island, requesting a warp back to Shigaraki. He narrowly dodges a thrown knife as Toga seemingly vanishes. Uraraka moves to his side while a villain keeps Izuku back. Suddenly Toga appears behind them, forcing Midoriya to shove Uraraka away while leaping away, again narrowly avoiding her attack, wondering why none of them are triggering his danger sense. That was mean, is it? I wanted to speak with 𝗵𝗲 first before talking with you again. This is incredible. The fourth user 𝐒𝐻𝐽 says, his ghostly self appearing behind Midoriya as he continues to avoid the villain's knife. Danger sense doesn't recognize her as a real threat. I can't believe someone like her exists. Why? What do you want with us? Midoriya asks, using Air Force to keep her back. I'm sorry, Midoriya. We can't warp you. You have to make your own way back here. Aizawa said through the comms. Understood. What did Eraser say? Uraraka asks, her eyes peeled for the elusive Toga. They can't warp me. I need to get there on my own. You can't leave yet. Toga calls out, appearing from behind him again. Even though I wanted to talk to 𝗵𝗲 first, I still want to ask you something really important. Midoriya tries to grab her with Black Whip, but she easily dodges them while cutting them away. The two stand apart a few feet away as Uraraka charges Toga. Alright. I'm listening. What is it you want to tell me? Toga lifts her hands to her cheeks in a cut gesture. That's easy. I want you to be my boyfriend. Both Midoriya and Uraraka stare at her in confusion and shock. This girl feels genuine affection whenever she hurts someone. 𝗒𝐻𝐽 states as Midoriya slowly clutches his teeth in frustration. No way, you too, Toga? He says, causing Toga to blink in confusion while Uraraka gives the two of them a sad look. How is it that I never noticed these things before? He asks in a comedic way before looking at Toga with a sad, almost regretful expression. I'm sorry, Toga. I have to refuse. She slowly lowers her hands as he continues. It's not because you're a villain, though. It doesn't help, but the truth is, I already have a girlfriend. Toga holds her hands to her chest while meeting Midoriya's eyes, thinking back to that night over a week ago. 𝗵𝗲. Suddenly, Toga leaps away as Izuku appears alongside Uraraka. Sorry I'm late. She looks at Midoriya. Deku, you need to leave right now. We'll handle Toga. Both girls get into their fighting stances as Toga grips her knife tightly while grabbing hold of the vial around her neck that held Yaoyorozu's drop of blood. After a moment of staring at the villain, Midoriya turns and leaps into the air, using float and 𝐵𝗃 to rocket away and towards Yue and the coffin in the sky. All Might steps out of his car, taking his case with him, and stands in the middle of the road while the wind and rain batter him. All the while listening to Tsukachi's team explain what was going on with 𝗲𝗵𝗺, mainly that he had been compressing his firepower and could blow at any minute, taking out the heroes, villains, and civilians within a 5-kilometer range. He lifts his hand up to his earpiece. Tsukachi, connect me to young Todoroki and young Ida. After a few seconds he was connected. He explains the situation and asks them to get to Gunga and stop 𝗲𝗵𝗺. Right now, the only things that can do anything about the crisis at Gunga are Engine and Half Cold Half Hot. You two are our only hope. We're counting on you. With that, he cuts the line, turning off his earpiece. We're leaving it to you, young Ida and young Todoroki, he says, looking in the direction of Kamino Ward. Next, it's my turn. He looks back down the road as his phone rings. Tsukachi, you idiot. The detective screams through the phone. What do you think you're doing? It's fine, Tsukachi. This was my fight in the first place. He looks up to see the approaching All-for-One, now much younger thanks to utilizing Ares Rewind he got from the quirk deleter bullet Shigaraki took from Overhaul. I heard Shigaraki's hatred has affected you? He holds out his arms while bowing his head as All-for-One quickly approaches. Then you can't ignore me, can you? How are you planning on fighting? You're quirkless, remember? Tsukachi shouts through his phone, his anger and worry for All Might evident in his tone. All Might thinks back to his first meeting with Midoriya when he asked if he could be a hero even without a quirk. That's right. You can't ignore me. His case and car activate, opening up as a deranged All-for-One gets closer. All Might lifts his head up, his signature smile on his face. Why? Because I am here. he shouts, watching his longtime adversary make a beeline straight for him. As his new support gear whirls to life, he recalls the ragged appearance of Midoriya before he ran off on his own, and the defeated look on Yaoyorozu's face when he left her under that awning. Young Midoriya. Young Yaoyorozu. I will make up for all the pain the two of you had to endure because of me. The sound of metal against metal rings out through the sound of rain and thunder, Yaoyorozu holding her own against Toga's seemingly unpredictable fighting style. But after training with someone like 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗄, who could maneuver around even the most well-aimed attacks, she manages to hone her own instincts and attention to detail to a degree where she can hold her own against the villain. As they clash, Uraraka and 𝗬𝗓𝗄 contend against the Toga doubles who were prioritizing on keeping the two friends from helping Yaoyorozu while avoiding any kind of damage, given their weak forms. The two of them connect their weapons against each other, pushing themselves together as Toga smiles a crazed grin at her friend. You know, Yamamoto, I was afraid we wouldn't get this chance to talk. Tomura really wants you dead for some reason. Yaoyorozu pushes back, managing to gain some ground while meeting the other girl's smile with her own. I noticed. I'm glad you convinced him to let us talk. She sidesteps in an attempt to trip Toga up. The other girl didn't fall for it and maneuvers around to slash at the hero's thigh, only for her to miss when Yaoyorozu hops out of the way in time. The two of them face each other again, taking up their stances, still wearing smiles on their faces. I was concerned about you after our fight at Gunga. Even more so when Achiko told me about your fight with her. She didn't get me like I thought she would. We shared the same crush, so I thought that gave us a chance to bond. She rushes forward, slashing at Yaoyorozu, who manages to defend against them. But now that you and Izuku are a thing, I'm over wanting to bond with her. Don't do that, Toga. She deflects a blow, opening the villain up to a kick that sent her stumbling back. She quickly recovers, anticipating Yaoyorozu to charge her with her guard down, only to find the other girl hadn't moved, holding a disappointed look on her face. Don't let one bad encounter ruin your chances at making a real friend. Why not? Didn't she get in the way of you and Izuku? Someone like that isn't a friend. Not far away, Uraraka was squaring off against a Toga copy, who had mirrored the original's complaint. This made the hero flinch, dropping her guard enough for the copy to rush her and manage to slash her across the arm. She cries out, rolling away to get some distance. Uravity! Azui calls out. She whips her tongue out at the second copy while leaping towards the first one, forcing them to back off as she lands beside Uraraka. You okay? How deep? I'm fine, Froppy. Uraraka replies, getting to her feet and glaring at the copies. I won't let her get in my head again. The two girls take their stances before resuming their fight. Yaoyorozu, who had turned when she heard her friend cry out, smiles at Uraraka before addressing Toga, who hadn't moved either. Even friends make mistakes, Toga. Haven't any of yours from the league made a few? Toga meets her gentle eyes as she recalls Jin bringing Chisaki to them, that lead to their big sis Magna getting killed. Achiko, Azui, Katsuki, Izuku, everyone from Class A are my friends, Toga. And I'd like you to be one as well. The villain stares at her with wide eyes. You mean it? You really see me as a friend? As they converse, Mirio and Ginist manage to gather Mirko, Nijire, and Tamaki to 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗄 as Ed Shot continues to repair his injuries while performing extreme CPR, a feat made easier thanks to the supplies and medicines Yaoyorozu provided. Wow. Just look at her go, Mirio said, placing Mirko against a tree while watching Yaoyorozu and the others fighting against Toga. I knew she got a lot better, but it's really amazing just how much. Indeed. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 truly has become a hero worthy of the title. Ginist replies, glaring at Toga and her copies. That said, I wish she'd hurry and knock Toga out already. Her copies are still running amok across the battlefields. Huh. Don't get your denim knickers in a twist, Genie. Mirko says with a smirk. Ginist gives her a disapproving glare while Mirio lets out a hearty laugh as she looks over at Yaoyorozu and Toga. Those annoying copies aren't going to be a problem for much longer. Suddenly, Toga grins at her friend while tearing off the vial of her blood she wore around her neck. We're really friends now, Yamamoto. I love you so much. Yaoyorozu, Azui, Uraraka, and the other onlooking heroes watch in horror as Toga pops open the vial. Stop her, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Right now. Azui shouts. Before Yaoyorozu even moved, Ginest had thrust his arms out in an attempt to snare the fibers of her clothes, only to find she had none on and the clothes her quirk manifests aren't made from fibers, thus also not under his control. Sadly for all of them, Himiko manages to ingest the drop of blood, triggering her transformation. Gone was her twice transformation, and with it, her thousands of copies, replaced with the form of Momo Yaoyorozu. And she had a crazed smile on her face. "I just have to become you," Toga said in Yaoyorozu's voice. "You don't know how hard it was keeping the sample of your blood secret from 𝗓𝗏, she explains as her arms begin to glow, sending horrified gasps throughout the heroes, with Yaoyorozu on the verge of collapsing from the overwhelming fear she felt. Partially because of how close 𝗓𝗏 came to stealing her quirk without her even knowing about it, but also the vast possibilities Toga now has to cause devastating damages, if not deaths. "I wasn't about to let him have your quirk, 𝗵𝗲, because..." Suddenly, she creates 3 highly advanced mini-attack drones that hover around her, targeting not just them, but also Kaminari and the others by him. "I want to be the one that becomes you." The activating drones whirl to life, their weapons ready to fire, snap Yaoyorozu out of her daze and attempt to stop them, when a massive cascade of explosions wash over the drones, destroying them all. The force of them knocking Toga, Uraraka, and 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐵 flat on their butts as Yaoyorozu stares in growing relief. "𝗵𝗲." She looks over her shoulder and smiles at the sight of Bakugo standing, his arm outstretched in front of him as the heroes around the boy look with shock and amazement. He trains his signature scowl on his friend before continuing. "And this, get to Deku and I'll keep 𝗓𝗏 off you both." He turns before Ginest or Mirio could move to stop him, blasting away towards the direction All Might was currently fighting 𝗓𝗏 on the other side of the city. "Thank you, great explosion murder god dynamite." She turns back to Toga, approaching her as she struggles to stand, the time she had with her transformation running out. "Damn it. I don't have enough blood to last much longer, and I used so much of her quirk on those drones," she thinks while struggling to her hands and knees, the amount of lipids she had barely giving her the strength to stand. After Shigaraki had learned about Yaoyorozu evolved quirk, 𝗓𝗏 became just as obsessed with getting it as one for all. This shift urged her to study up on the quirk, preparing herself for this moment, taking the time to not just study how it works, but what she'd be able to create. "It's over, Toga. Please, come quietly and I promise, I'll make time to talk to you as often as I can," Yaoyorozu says as she drew closer, her friends getting to their feet behind the villainous girl. "No one else is to die here." "I'd like that a very, very much, 𝗵𝗲." Toga manages to get to her feet, a sinister look in her eyes. "Problem is, someone always has to die, in order to change the world." As she shouts that last part, her entire body begins to grow. Utilizing all the lipids in her body, she creates the largest and most destructive weapon she could, a nuclear bomb. "Evacuate! Right now!" Ginest shouts into his earpiece as the injured heroes quickly back away. Toga, losing her Yaoyorozu transformation, collapses against the bomb and activates it before crashing to the ground with a satisfied smile on her face. "I love you girls." With that, her eyes close. Uraraka and 𝐒𝐲𝐢 were racing towards Kaminari and the others before she looks over her shoulder, spotting Yaoyorozu kneeling beside the bomb. "What are you doing? Get out of there!" she screams, causing 𝐒𝐲𝐢 to look as well. She was already on the move before Toga collapsed. Yaoyorozu reaches the bomb and looks to the control panel to turn it off. Her pupils dilate upon seeing only an on button and a timer that read they had only 8 seconds before it explodes. "Toga, what have you done?" She racks her brain for a solution, coming up with nothing that could be tried with the little time she had. At 5 seconds, the shouts of her friends along with the other heroes became a white noise as she glares at the bomb before her. An image of Midoriya and her soaring through the air makes her look up with wide eyes. At 4 seconds, she looks back at the nuke with a desperate idea in mind. 3 seconds, she pictures space in her mind while quickly running though the principles behind Kurogiri's warp quirk, having been asked to assist Monoma with his training for it at the last minute. 2 seconds, she slams her hands to the ground and instantly creates a warp gate underneath it, the vacuum of space dragging the bomb through while nearly pulling both her and Toga through as well. At the 1 second mark, She closes the gate and struggles to look back up with a weak smile. After the second passes, a distant explosion could barely be heard right above them, the present heroes looking up in disbelief before turning their gazes on the exhausted Yaoyorozu. Uraraka approaches her as Azui moves to carefully check on Toga. "Momo, did you just create 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐫 warp gate?" The other girl manages to look up at her friend with a weak smile before her body gave out, collapsing to the ground beside Toga, passed out. "Momo, hurry. Izuku is in terrible danger." Yaoyorozu awoke with a start, waving her arms around at the odd sensation of being weightless. "Whoa. Easy, Momo. You're okay." She steadies herself before looking at Uraraka carrying her towards the other heroes as they watch over the evacuation now that the coffin in the sky was back on the ground. "Welcome back. What happened?" she asks. "You created a warp gate and sent Toga's nuke into space," Uraraka explains, giving her friend an excited smile. "You were amazing, Momo." She smiles at the other girl as Uraraka sets her down, supporting the still weakened girl. "What about Toga? Where is she?" "Is she?" Uraraka frowns before looking towards Azui, and Mandalay supervised Toga as the paramedics treat her. "It's too early to tell. She used a lot of her energy to create that bomb. There's no telling if she was irradiated by it or not until they get her to a hospital." Yaoyorozu watches them taking Toga away as Uraraka tells her about the progress from the other teams. Despite 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐫's arrival and helping 𝗲𝗵𝗺 reach his father, Todoroki and Iida were able to work together and get from Kamino to Gunga, where Todoroki, with the surprised assistance from his family, was able to stop 𝗲𝗵𝗺 from exploding and killing hundreds if not thousands. The battle against 𝐴ll4𝐿 was devastating. Even with the surprise assistance from 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝐻, MT Lady, and the hero students from Shiketsu High, his active rewind made him younger and stronger, blasting away everyone and stealing Hawk's fierce wings before taking off towards Shigaraki and Midoriya. But in a last-stand effort, All Might confronted his longtime nemesis, utilizing an advanced suit of armor designed by Melissa's shield to stall the villain, even getting some assistance by Stain of all people. And just as 𝗏4𝐿 was about to get the upper, 𝗵𝘃𝗀 arrived, using his increased power along with the last part of All Might's suit to keep the villain at bay long enough for his time to run out. As of this moment, Tomura, Shigaraki, and 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝗏 are the last members of the League of Villains left standing. Genist finishes, drawing the two girls' attention. The heroes still able to fight are ordered to assist Deku and end this nightmare. Yaoyorozu's eyes widen before whipping around towards MT Fuji. "That's right. Izuku. He's in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Genist asks, aware of the girl's strong connection to Midoriya and One for All. "I don't know exactly, but my connection to One for All is weaker now." "Damn it. We're moving out now. Tsukachi, send every available hero to Deku, right away." "What's Phantom Thief's condition?" Genist rushes off with Mirio and Nijire following. Kaminari approaches Uraraka and Yaoyorozu as they were focused on the horizon. "This is intense. How are we supposed to get to him fast enough to help?" he asks as he stands beside them. "I could open another warp, but I can't remember the coordinates for MT Fuji," Yaoyorozu admits, clutching her fists tightly as frustration grew. "Even if you could, you're in no condition to fight Shigaraki," Uraraka points out, easing them down to the ground. "Katsuki was brought back from the dead, and he not only saved us from Toga's drones but also went to fight 𝗏4𝐿, even managing to stop him." Images of both Midoriya and 𝗵𝘃𝗀 lying dead by her feet burn into her mind as tears stream down her cheeks. "He told me to help Izuku. I promised I'd be by his side at the end. I can still move, so I can still fight." MT Fuji is 35 degrees 21, 17.27 north latitude and 138 degrees 43, 30.95 east longitude. Yaoyorozu and the others gasp in response to La Brava's sudden voice appearing through the comms. "If you're going to help the man you love, then you better hurry. I can see him now, and he's not gonna make it without backup." Yaoyorozu smiles. "I can't thank you enough, La Brava. Send us invites to the wedding, and I'll call us even." Yaoyorozu could practically hear the older woman winking at her. "You got it." She thrusts her arm before her and creates a warp gate, throwing herself through before it closes, leaving her friends behind. Tomura is gone, and with him decay. I may have one for all, but without Yoichi, it's a bittersweet victory. All for One laments as the massive body of Tomura Shigaraki towers over the beaten-down Midoriya, his fierce determination burning strong within his eyes. All that is left now is that girl's creation quirk, then world domination. It's surprising how hollow I find my impending victory too. You won't lay a finger on Momo. Midoriya cuts him off, his voice low and threatening. I'll stop you before you get anywhere near her. He struggles to get back up to his feet. He finally looks down and, to his surprise, finds both of his hands are gone, the pain breaking through his rage. Midoriya screams out in pain as All for One scowls down at the boy. For one such as you to reduce the demon lord to this injured state is laughable. Suddenly a warp gate opens up beside Midoriya, drawing both hero and villain's attention. Shock crosses their faces as Yaoyorozu emerges from it, collapsing to the ground beside Midoriya as the gate closes behind her. What an unexpected surprise. All for One comments, a hint of a smile appearing on his face. Momo. Midoriya calls out, getting her attention. The two weakened teens meet each other's eyes, a mix of relief and dread flashing through both of them. I'm sorry, I couldn't be here sooner, she says, crawling over to him. She smiles as she kneels before him. But I kept my promise. I'm standing with you here at the end. Momo. Before he could say more, Yaoyorozu gently places her hands on his handless arms as a warm glow emanates from them and washes over the stubs. His eyes widen as his hand slowly begins to regenerate right before their eyes. Extraordinary. Her quirk has reached its fullest potential, able to create entirely new limbs. All for One explains as he approaches. While not as efficient as my super regeneration, it's still a quirk worth taking. Midoriya watches in horror as All for One moves to touch Yaoyorozu as she focuses on his hands. Stop. Don't touch her. A large wave of tape covers All for One's hand, stopping him from reaching the two teens. You hurt him. Keep your hands to yourself. Zero lands on a building close by, glaring at All for One as Midoriya looks at him with surprise and relief. Cellophane. You two look like crap, Deku. Sit tight. We're here to save you this time. We? Yaoyorozu asks, nearly finished regrowing his hands. All for One tears through the tape to resume his charge when Ojiro and Sato launch themselves at the villain. Tornado Tail Dance. Ojiro shouts, slamming a powerful hit across All for One's face, stunning him enough for Sato to close the distance. Sugar Knuckle. Sato shouts, connecting his strongest punch that knocks the villain sliding back nearly a block. We heard from Uravity that 𝗏𝗏𝗏 managed to warp here using her power. We weren't about to sit by and let this jerk take both of your quirks. Luckily we were close by. Ojiro continues as he and Zero land in front of Midoriya and Yaoyorozu. We rushed over as soon as we heard the call to support you. More pathetic insects to get in my way. All for One says in annoyance. Yeah. So what? Even insects can turn the tide of a fight. Zero shoots back. Behind him, Yaoyorozu finishes restoring Midoriya's hands, collapsing into his chest from exhaustion. Momo, you did great. Please rest, and let us take care of him. No. She replies, getting a surprised look from him. I can't feel the other wielders. She opens her tired eyes. You're quirkless again, aren't you? He meets her knowing eyes with a sad frown. Another warp gate appears beside them as Aizawa emerges from it. Apologizes for the delay. As he kneels beside the two, more warp gates open up with more and more able-bodied heroes pouring out, ready to fight off All for One. Aizawa looks at Yaoyorozu with both concern and approval. Uravity told me what you were able to do. He pulls out something from his pocket and holds it out towards the two. They recognize it right away. Is that Ares' horn? Midoriya asks. Yes. It should give you enough time to regain your strength. The rewind quirk. The three of them sharply turn to All for One as the other heroes take up positions around them. With both rewind and creation, I could bring Yoichi back. As he focuses on the two heroes, Yaoyorozu has an idea. She shares a knowing look with Midoriya, who nods in understanding. She smiles and closes her eyes, laying against his chest. Midoriya looks up and addresses the heroes. Everyone. Buy us as much time as you can. You got it. Kirishima replies, hardening his body as 𝗧𝗧𝗧 does the same. The rest of their friends launch the first wave of attacks at all for one as Midoriya looks to Aizawa. Erase her head when she activates creation. Please use Aries' horn to restore her strength. Done. He hovers the horn over Yaoyorozu's form. What's she planning, Midoriya? All for one. He said he could use their quirks to bring back his brother. He looks at his teacher. Because I was quirkless, One for All was able to take root in me. And, just like with All Might, some embers still remain after passing it on to Shigaraki. 𝐒𝐻𝐼 widens. You gave Shigaraki One for All? Midoriya nods before looking back at the battle taking place before them. I had to. He was going to steal them regardless. There was nothing I could do. So, the Wielders and I came to a difficult decision. We had to fight him from the inside. He looks back due at Yaoyorozu. But, with those embers, it's possible that Momo can recreate One for All. Inside One for All, Yaoyorozu opens her eyes, finding herself back within the room the Wielders used to converse with them over a month ago. She examines her rejuvenated body before looking around, taking note of the ruin the room now is in. The Wielders' chairs spewed about with no sign of them. Nanayoji, everyone. I'm sorry. She makes her way to the door that remains untouched by damage, suspecting the remnants of One for All were behind it. She throws herself against it, pulls on the door, and even summons her suit similarly to how their costumes appeared when she and Midoriya stood up to Nana Shimura. But the door wouldn't budge. She leans against it as her fear and worry start to grow within her. I need to get in. There isn't enough of rewind to waste it on this. So how? As she struggles with ways to get through, the memory of her first time here flashes to her mind, recalling the path she made stemmed from her desire to be with Midoriya. An image of the two of them holding each other the night they professed their love for each other came to mind along with an idea. Izuku, she says with a smile, placing her hand over her heart. Momo. Back outside, Midoriya looks down at her, feeling her heart suddenly beating steadily even. Just like that night. He says to himself, earning a questioning look from Aizawa. What's wrong? It's Momo. I think she's asking for my help. What are you waiting for then? Midoriya nods firmly, laying his head against hers while pulling her in closer, their hearts slowly beating in perfect sync. With their hearts in sync, Yaoyorozu gently places her hand on the door and pushes it open with ease, the synchronization between the two granting her access to the guarded inner core of One for All, where the remains of the great quirk rests. That did it. She cheers before making her way to the smoldering embers, kneeling beside it. Let's finish this together. Izuku. Eri. She holds out her hands towards the embers and activates creation. Her physical body mirrors the action, prompting Aizawa to press Eri's horn to her shoulder, its rewind power pouring into Yaoyorozu and rejuvenating her enough to pour her creation power into One for All's core. Miraculously, the smoldering embers began to grow, eventually taking the appearance of All Might's visage. She smiles at it as Nana Shimura returns. With a start, giving the girl a shock expression. Momo, what are you? She starts to say as Entayutai returns. Daigoro Banjo, Hikage and Bruce follow suit, each giving the other and Yaoyorozu surprised looks. Way to go, kid. Banjo cheers as Yaoyorozu focuses on Kudo while he shoots a smirk at Bruce. Still think it was a bad idea to have her involved? The other man glares at him when Yaoyorozu grunts out. They all turn to her with concern. You alright there, kid? No, Aries rewind. It ran out of energy. The past Wielders look to the head of Kudo as his stern eyes watch the young hero pour everything into restoring them and One for All. The second wielder of this quirk smiles at her. You can stop then, Momo. She looks at him with sadness in her eyes. Shimura and the others are more than enough for Izuku to defeat All for One for good. No need to drain yourself for me and Yoichi. But I can still... That may be. But you proclaimed to all of us you would stand by Izuku's side at the end. That will be difficult when you can't even stand. The two of them meet each other's eyes, sharing a moment of respect and gratitude. Then Yaoyorozu stops her creation, standing up to meet the man in the eye. They smile as he begins to fade back into One for All's core. The future is for you two and your friends. Make it a good one. With that, he fades away, leaving Yaoyorozu and the Wielders to mourn his passing. "We will," she replies as Nana and All Might's visage stand beside her as she wipes the tears from her eyes. "Rest now, Yoi. Kudo." Nana rests her hand on the young girl's shoulder, giving her a smile when she looks back at her. "Let's finish this, Momo." She looks at her with determination and nods. "Right. What was that?" All for One says aloud as Todoroki and Endeavor emerge from 2 more warp gates and blast the villain with Flash Fire Fist, burning him as other heroes swarm him. Kaminari activates a support item Hatsum gave him before he left, turning it into a mini railgun made to channel his power. He smirks as Oima and Nijire join him. The 3 charge their attacks and blast All for One, damaging his body while keeping him back. All for One uses search to find Midoriya was rapidly getting stronger. "You wretches!" he shouts, unleashing a wave of power that knocks the heroes away before charging at the 2. "You won't take my brother from me again." "He's coming," Aizawa warns, drawing his knife while using the meager strength of his erasure to cancel out a few of All for One's quirks. On instinct, Midoriya activates One for All, feeling the familiar surge of power flow throughout his body. He smiles while holding Yaoyorozu's body close. "She did it," he calls out. All for One was nearly on them as Aizawa turns to take her and allow Midoriya to fight when a massive explosion rocks against the massive villain, stalling his charge. Everyone looks up to see Bakugo, on the verge of dying, hanging in the air with his arms pointed at All for One. "Kaken, take him down already. You idiots." "That boy again?" All for One growls out before turning towards the 2 teens, growing even more frustrated to see both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu standing together, the vestiges of All Might, Nana, and Banjo, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Bruce floating behind them. He freezes for a moment, the hope of seeing Yoichi's spark refusing to fade. "Well done, Momo Yaoyorozu. You managed to restore One for All. So where is Yoichi?" Both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu get into their fighting stances, with Yaoyorozu creating blaster gauntlets around her arms and a belt that functions similarly to Toga's gear, with poison-tipped needles at the end of 9 wires she can control with her mind. "I'm sorry to say that I didn't have enough power to fully restore One for All completely." She glares at the villain. "Kudo and Yoichi are gone. You weak fool," he shouts, hearing the names of those he both hates and loves setting him off. "I'll take your quirk. Then find the girl who wields Rewind and restore him myself." "You will do no such thing," Midoriya shouts, bringing his power up to 45%. Even though One for All isn't complete, there's still more than enough to go around. All for One, along with the gathered heroes, watches Yaoyorozu activates her half of One for All, spreading the power throughout her body much like Midoriya does. The 2 stand together as his hair glows a light blue while hers glows an almost dark brown, her silver eyes twinkling just like Midoriya's. "This ends All for One," Yaoyorozu shouts as Uraraka, Ajui, Ashido, and Jiro watch their friend with awe. "Right here. Right now." Suddenly, the 2 of them rush forward, a large gust of wind, knocking those closest to the ground as they reach All for One. Midoriya hits him with a Detroit smash while Yaoyorozu blasts him with her powered-up gauntlet, the force sending All for One crushing the city. The 2 heroes kept up the pressure, keeping the villain angry and reckless. Though his own danger sense was working, his rage left him vulnerable to her subtle stings, the poison a new concoction made specifically to target the quirk factors. She felt sick resorting to the same tactic Chisaki tortured Eri to perfect, but Nana and Bruce were adamant she use every advantage to end this decades-long conflict. As the clash drags out, All for One began to catch on to her ploy, swinging his arm at her in a rage. She didn't move to dodge or block as Midoriya zooms in, catching the attack. She positions her arms to her sides, charging her blasters before Midoriya pulls All for One towards her. She yells while thrusting her arms forward, connecting her gauntlets to his face as they erupt, the force of the blast nearly obliterating his head. Now dazed, Midoriya leaps into the air so high, only Hatsum could spot him from the evacuation site. Suddenly, Midoriya rockets towards All for One as he looks at Yaoyorozu. "Fools! He won't make it." He lunges at Yaoyorozu, ignoring the smirk on her face. "We'll see." Smoke explodes out of her, blocking his view as she thrusts one arm in front of her and the other to the sky, creating warp gates. Midoriya rockets out of the gate with his FA gene-powered legs. 𝗲 100%. St. Louis smash. He connects his kick to the shocked 𝗎𝗓𝗏, sending him hurtling through the sky. Izuku. 2 black whip tendrils attached to the buildings on either side of him. He smirks, then leaps backward. Yaoyorozu presses her feet to his back as he pushes them back enough to stretch the lines until they were at their limit. Midoriya uses Black Whip to keep them still as 𝗎𝗓 nears the ground, giving Yaoyorozu the chance to lean in and kiss him on the cheek. Let's save everyone. Izuku. You read my mind. Momo. After sharing a warm smile, they refocus on the distant foe until he was in the right position. Suddenly Midoriya releases his hold on the ground. Let's go. The two of them shot forward just as fast as Ida had gone to get to Gunga. Midoriya aims his other charged leg while Yaoyorozu wraps her legs around his waist, aiming her blasters behind them to act as rockets. The two of them close the distance between themselves and 𝗎𝗓 within a fraction of a millisecond. 𝗲 100%. Tag team lovers, United States of World Smash. The two of them call out right before colliding with 𝗎𝗓. The force of the impact combined with the injections resulted in his large form exploding into bloodless chunks of meat, revealing Shigaraki's modified body. The two of them connect their kick into his stomach, causing 𝗎𝗓 to cough up blood as they soar through the air and past the stunned heroes, crashing into the side of empty Fuji. The impact sending cracks across the stone face of the mountain. The two heroes float back from 𝗎𝗓 as his continues to cough up blood, confusion on his face. 𝗬𝗏 isn't super regeneration working? 𝗬𝗏 can't I feel my quirks? He glares a crazed scowl at Yaoyorozu. What did you do to me? I did what you've been doing to others for decades. I took your quirks. She raises her hand up towards him. Ready, Izuku? Yeah. He mirrors her movement, their actions and tone frightening 𝗎𝗓. Before he could protest, the co-wielders of One for All rush him, placing their hands on his head and triggering the transfer, bringing the final moments of their conflict within. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu open their eyes to find themselves standing on a street with a destroyed house before them, the remnants of the former wielders scattered about from their prior attempt to stop 𝗎𝗓. What a mess, Bruce said. He and the other remaining wielders survey the damage while All Might's vestige stands behind the two students. He places a hand on both their shoulders, the act giving them the strength to cross the devastation around them and enter the ruined house, leaving the other wielders to gather the scattered remains of their power. Inside, Midoriya recognizes the frozen moments from his 𝗵𝗲's and 𝗎𝗓's lives hanging like still murals throughout the structure. What is all this? Yaoyorozu asks, staring at a mural that depicts Midoriya, Ida, and Todoroki fighting against Stain. Memories. Mine 𝗵𝗲's and 𝗎𝗓's. He explains while looking at the moment Tenko's decay raged out of control. His mother attempting to reach her son but fades into dust. Shigaraki and 𝗎𝗓's merger failed, resulting in their consciousnesses blowing apart, causing this. He says, moving past more murals towards the back door. So, why are yours among them? She asks, stopping before a mural that depicted the two of them with Eri enjoying their day out, right before Tesla showed up. She lets out a sigh of both nostalgia and sadness. I had to give one for all to Shigaraki in order to create an opening. When I did, my consciousness joined theirs. As he reaches the door, he gasps in surprise. Shigaraki? He calls out, getting Yaoyorozu to rush to his side, just as surprised to see the young villain standing in the middle of the backyard, looking down at 𝗎𝗓 cradling the remains of Yoichi. The villain looks at the two of them. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I'm not so easily cast aside, he explains as Midoriya and Yaoyorozu slowly approach the two villains. In the end, I didn't get to achieve my goals. He smiles darkly. And I don't see any chance of a continuance. He addresses Yaoyorozu. Did the two of you have a nice convo, Momo-Yaoyorozu? She holds his leering gaze and nods. I look forward to having many more with her once she recovers. She's still alive? She nods again. 𝗵𝗄. Spinner? Dabi? They nod again, Midoriya receiving an update from Aizawa while she was restoring One for All. Shigaraki's smile grows bigger. Good. I'd hate to see them upset. When you see them, tell them I never stopped trying to destroy everything. They nod again. Please, little brother. Stay with me. The three of them look down at All for One as the last of Yoichi's power fades away, the first wielder truly gone now. No. He throws his head back and glares at the two heroes. Curse you both. If you had just given me your quirks, I could have saved him, but you ruined everything. You and that oaf 𝗵𝗃𝗺. And that bastard who took my brother in the first place. Why did that boy have the same eyes? On and on he raves about the people that stood in his way, never once pointing the blame at himself. This is just sad, All for One. He approaches his former master and lays his hand on his head, his decay finally silencing him for good. We lost. No point throwing a temper tantrum. Midoriya, after squeezing Yaoyorozu's hand, steps towards Shigaraki. It's over. Tomura Shigaraki. He stands before the villain and holds his fist out towards him. He chuckles upon laying eyes on his restored hands. Couldn't even destroy your hands properly. You're something else. Izuku Midoriya. He bumps his fist against Midoriya's, the act transferring one for all to him, and causes his consciousness to crumble away. The young student offers him a sincere smile. I only fought to save as many people as I could. As for my hands, you have my girlfriend to thank for that. Tomura turns towards her, an easy smile on his face. Suppose I do. The two share a moment, polar opposites that hold the powers of decay and creation, destruction and rebirth. He chuckles. From the ashes of destruction comes the soil of creation. She replies, a single tear escaping her eyes as they watch Tomura Shigaraki fade away. In the last moments, he spots Nana Shimura standing at the back door, watching her grandson finally be out to rest. She doesn't try to hold back her tears as the former wielders gather around her, with All Might's visage holding her. Yaoyorozu turns to look at the older woman break down, on the verge of doing the same when a gentle hand rests on her shoulder. She turns and embraces Midoriya, the two holding each other in mourning and celebration. All for One was finally no more. The world was saved from his evil ambitions, and they no longer had his dark presence haunting their steps. They were free to live their lives. Together. Yaoyorozu pulls away and smiles at Midoriya, staring at each other for a moment before the two lean in and share a loving kiss. Spoiler warning for manga ending. The sun was bright in the afternoon with the streets busy with people young and old going about their business. Among them is Yaoyorozu wearing a simple sundress that was tied around her noticeable belly with a matching hat to shield her from the rays. Beside her is Eri wearing a school uniform for middle school students with a guitar case strapped to her back, her horn having grown back nicely. On her other side is Midoriya rocking a large scare under his right eye while wearing casual clothes for the get-together they were currently on their way to. The only things that stuck out was a wristband that shared a similar design and color scheme with his Air Force gloves and a wedding ring on his left-hand ring finger. One that Yaoyorozu shares on her own hand. It has been 4 years since they defeated the League of Villains, Tomura Shigaraki, and All for One. Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yaoyorozu are both 20 years old, have graduated from UA High School, and have been married for just over a year at this point, having taken their first anniversary trip to New Island where they visited Melissa while spending time together, enjoying the downtime around such amazing innovations and the people making them. A few days after they returned from their honeymoon, the newlyweds met with Eri and her grandfather, the old head of the 𝗓𝗏 Saikai, and asked for his permission to formally adopt her as their daughter. After a tense moment that was mainly for show, he smiled at the young couple and agreed. He even went as far as to apologize for the wrong Chisaki committed towards the three of them. Hey, Dad? Eri asks, looking up from her phone. Midoriya glances at her, trying to ignore the people staring at him. Do you think Uncle Katsuki will play in my band for my school's festival? Daichi broke his hand the other day. Is he alright? What happened? Yaoyorozu asks, concerned for the young boy. He was showing off for Hoshiko, catching one of Kenta's fast balls with his bare hand. Kenta? Isn't he the one with the power-type quirk? Midoriya asks, recalling the young man geeking out when he had picked up Eri from school on her first day. Yep. Hence the broken hand. She replies with a smirk. I'm sure Kaken wouldn't mind. But you'd have better luck if Momo asks him. I'll ask him. But wouldn't it be better for the band's dynamic if I repair his hand instead? No. If he's gonna act stupid, then he needs to pay for it. She replies with an upset tone while pouting. Yaoyorozu scolds while Midoriya looks away to try and hide the smirk on his face. She catches it, giving him the same look. "Izuku, don't encourage that kind of thing." "I'm not doing anything of the sort," he says comically, waving his hands around, making Eri laugh at the antics while her mother just sighs, shaking her head. "Honestly, you too," dispute her stern showing. She couldn't keep the joy she felt from filling her with warmth from simply being around her husband and daughter. It was times like this, when there wasn't a care in the world for them to worry about, that she caught herself thinking back over the last 4 years that lead them to this simple family life. After they defeated 𝗓𝗏, bringing the war to a definitive end, every able-bodied person throughout the country came together to rebuild Japan. And not just the buildings and neighborhoods, but the many communities spread throughout the sites. Civilians young and old pitched in to help the heroes and emergency response teams to care and assist anyone who was injured or frightened, ignoring the state their appearance was in. Heroes and other volunteers the world over flocked to the country with aid and able bodies to help with the recovery effort. This additional aid allowed the people of Japan to take a day to honor those who had fallen since the Jaku and Gunga raid. Yaoyorozu stood with Ashido and Tokage to honor Majestic and Midnight, while Midoriya and All Might stood with Grand Tornio, Tsukachi, and the American pilots to honor Star and Stripe. Not long after that, Mirio, Tamaki, and Nijire celebrated their graduation along with the rest of the third years, which also marked the return of classes for the remain students and the new first years. As their second school year began, students from both Class 2A and B kept getting swarmed by the new students that they even forced 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 and Todoroki to use Ida as a buffer for the first few months, while Midoriya and Yaoyorozu, who would also get swarmed, relied on Ashido and Kirishima to help them out at times. Aoyama was officially suspended from UA due to the criminal charges, but was sentenced to community service rather than jail for the part he played in the battle with 𝗓𝗏. And true to his word, Aizawa never suspended him from his tutelage, often meeting with him to continue his hero education. With an empty spot now available, Hitoshi Shinso was transferred to Class 2A, building a solid friendship and rivalry with Midoriya, often teaming up with him when he's not partnering with Yaoyorozu or 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀. With her new power to create virtually anything, Yaoyorozu went around those who suffered irreversible injuries. The first being Jiro, easily recreating the earphone jack she lost during her fight against 𝗓𝗏. Next, she approached 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 and Aizawa, offering to repair the former's still damaged organs and the latter's lost leg and eye. They accept and, with the help and guidance of Recovery Girl, successfully restored them both to fighting condition, save for the scars they opted to keep. Together, they visited 𝗳𝗏𝗃, Mirko, and Endeavor. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 and Mirko both accepted while Endeavor refused, deciding he didn't deserve such an offer. Instead, resigning himself to his fate and retiring from hero work. Even Hawks, with the chance to have his stolen quirk recreated, had decided not to do so, saying he'd earned his new desk job and his wings would only making him restless. And the new head of the Public Safety Commission needed to stay sharp and focused if he was going to restructure the whole thing. He had given her a knowing wink when she had brought up Lady Nagant, and the program she and Midoriya pitched him not too long ago. At the start of the school year, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, Ajui, Todoroki, and his family visited Tartarus. Midoriya sat down with Spinner, their first interaction with one another since the training camp where he had broke the villain's weapon and Spinner and saved him from Magna. As they spoke of Shigaraki and the comic he was going to make to ensure no one forgets the League, Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, and Ajui went to visit Himiko Toga. She was currently in an isolated cell wearing a straitjacket with her every move being monitored. They four of them spoke, awkwardly at first, but thanks to Yaoyorozu's perseverance, they were able to relax and have a pleasant conversation, mainly about Midoriya and her relationship with him. As they bonded, promising to visit as often as possible, Todoroki and his entire family visited Toya, who was in a specialized Iron Maidon. It was a short visit, with Toya acting bitter towards them until Shoto passed on Shigaraki's last message. He fell silent until the youngest Todoroki asked him what his favorite food was. His reply, cold soba. As the months passed, Yaoyorozu and Eri often would work together to replenish the weakening One for All. Even though they could restore the quirk and the wielders easily enough, the two quirks that formed the base of its core were lost along with Yoichi and Kudo, the transfer quirk and the stockpile quirk. Without them or any trance of their wielders, The girls were only prolonging the inevitable. So, after a bittersweet decision, the Remain Wielders decided to allow the power to fade. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, All Might, and even Grand Tornio gathered together, Yaoyorozu providing All Might and Grand Tornio the means to converse with Nana Shimura while the other wielders faded away bidding their farewells. Before her time came, Nana gave each other them a loving hug and prideful words, lingering the longest with Yaoyorozu. She praised the young hero for all she has done and gives their relationship her full support. With all that said and done, SH fades away as the vestige of All Might simply flows into the elderly hero, bringing an end to One for All and making Izuku Midoriya quirkless once again. Despite that he remained in Class A, becoming inseparable from Yaoyorozu throughout the rest of their time at UA. That's not to say they were attracted at the hip at all times. The two still made time for their friends, helping them with their schoolwork, hero training, and even taking work studies despite his quirkless status. At one point, Yaoyorozu used her family's influence to arrange a collaborated meeting for 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲. Once the two were together, she bowed before them and asked they work together to create a power suit for Midoriya. They both helped her up before agreeing without hesitation, though it could take some time to complete, even for them. She threw her arms around them, thanking them profusely. On their way back from New Island, her father expressed approval towards Midoriya for the first time since they first met. She couldn't hold in a giggle upon recalling how furious she knew he was to learn the friend she had told them of was Midoriya. He fought to keep his composure as Uraraka had just settled the crowd, and blowing up on the boy then would have set off the crowd once again. Their second and third years at UA came and went with a hardly any kind of dangerous event that came anywhere close to those from their first year. Hatsum and Melissa completed the suit for Midoriya after 8 months, giving it to him right before the second year's finals where he was paired with Shinso, passing them with flying colors. Yaoyorozu was paired with Bakugo and they managed to score better than them. Throughout the 2 years, Midoriya and Yaoyorozu had been working alongside Hawks, All Might, Danjuro Tabita, and Manami Iba, aka Gentle Criminal, and La Brava, and even her parents to construct and finalize a program meant to provide support and aid for incarcerated criminals and villains alike. A few days before their graduation ceremony, they all gathered together to meet with the Japanese government to discuss and push the One for All program. A few days later, Class A sat at their graduation ceremony where Principal Nizu had just finished giving the last student their diploma. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite this year's valedictorian to close off this ceremony with a few words. Ms. Momo Yaoyorozu. Principal Nizu leads the crowd in applause as Yaoyorozu approaches the podium. She shakes the small creature's paw before standing behind the microphone, addressing the crowd with a bright smile. Thank you, Principal Nizu. When I was asked to represent our class here today, I was thrilled. I had often dreamed of doing those I care about proud through my education and diligence towards the curriculum and the values we as a society hold dear with regards to being a hero. But then our first year at UA began, and those dreams quickly shattered, to be replaced with reality, leaving very little room for any rose-tinted fantasies about what I wanted for my future. The world we found our way through that first year was strife with pain, tragedy, and blood. We fought for our lives on more than one occasion. All Might, Japan's #1 hero and the world's symbol of peace, gave his all against a terrifying villain in 2 heartbreaking battles. And while he will always be a hero to all, we in Class A will always have the privilege of knowing him as an amazing teacher, steadfast mentor, and cherished friend. Midoriya looked towards All Might, fighting to contain his tears as Grand Tornio and Tsukachi stood beside him. We lost friends. We lost family. We lost teachers and colleagues. And we lost that sense of safety All Might provided diligently for decades. That was a catalyst, not just for Japan or the world, but for us who studied under him up until that point. Those rose-tint glasses we all had were shattered that day, and we were all forced to ask ourselves that one terrifying question. With All Might gone, what will happen to our world? With that question lingering through all our minds, many lost hope and fell back on their impulses, causing the crime rate to grow, despite our remaining heroes' efforts. But we in Class A did not lose hope. In ourselves, in each other, and in our new goals and dreams. The challenges that we were about to face held no fear for us. For even when one of us faltered, the rest was there to lend our hands, ensuring we all strove forward together. And together, we overcame numerous trials and tribulations from not just the world at large, but within ourselves as well, discovering parts of ourselves that both frightened and ashamed us. But we stood tall, stuck together, and pushed through them all to reach the end of our UA journey. And even though we lost and gained a student along the way, they are no less our classmate because of it. I stand here today representing Class A as their valedictorian, no longer from a childish desire to be the perfect student, but out of necessity. For no one person could truly encapsulate what Class A has become. We are no longer classmates. We are friends. We are no longer teammates. We are a family. And we are no longer a bunch of newbies. We are heroes. The crowd roared with applause and cheers as the students of Class A threw their caps into the air, with Bakugo releasing a huge explosion that sent them all flying higher into the sky. As the teachers and his parents berate him, Midoriya rushed to Yaoyorozu's side and gave her the deepest kiss yet, much to her father's chagrin. And a few days later, he found himself kneeling before her, presenting the same engagement ring his father had proposed to his mother so many years ago. She agreed without hesitation, sharing another deep kiss shortly after he had placed the ring on her finger. As the two of them were meeting with Eri and her grandfather, her mother Hikari Yaoyorozu went to Tartarus to visit Lady Nagant at her cell, expressing gratitude for her rescue all those years ago and the regret she felt for believing the lie that sent her to jail. The incarcerated hero didn't take it personally, actually apologizing for the grief she had caused the other woman. Smiling when they started to talk about Momo Yaoyorozu, Hikari pulls out a package and shows Lady Nagant the new program for villains and criminals alike. The One for All program was finally approved by the government and was on its way to being implemented countrywide. It gives prisoners the chance to reform with the help of a citizen sponsor. Hikari offers to be Lady Nagant's sponsor, much to her surprise. Meanwhile, Uraraka was visiting Toga alone while on another visit. They talk for a bit until she shows Toga the program. She asks why Momo didn't want to be her sponsor, which Uraraka tells her. The three of them cross the street, finding themselves beside a familiar fountain. Yaoyorozu shares a fond smile with Midoriya as Eri sits on the ledge, putting the finishing touches on the song she and her band were going to play at the festival. Maybe if I know. That's stupid. Why don't you wait until we get to the party, Eri? Midoriya says as he and Yaoyorozu finally approach her, holding each other's hands while she enjoys another moment of nostalgia. Jiro's gonna be there. She'll be able to help with your song. Yeah, but I want to show her how good I've gotten with my writing. She clutches her fist and gives him a determined face. I want this song to be as amazing as hers was from my first UA festival. So you wait until the last minute to finish? He points out in a cheeky way, making the young girl nervously look away while scratching an invisible itch. Hey, you three. The new voice draws their attention. They smile and wave at an approaching taller man. It's been a while. How've you been? Yaoyorozu smiles brightly as she approaches him, giving the older man a hug. Wonderful. She pulls away. And you? How'd the interview go? He steps back and gives them a cheesy poise. Just call me Masahiro Kanemaru, assistant electrician. That's great to hear. She cheers while clapping with excitement. Congratulations, Mr. Kanemaru. Midoriya says, standing beside his wife to shake his hand. I'm glad your hard work's starting to pay off. Thank you. Both of you. He releases his hand and gives them a sad smile. I owe you 2 more than I could ever repay. Especially you, Midoriya. He frowns. What I did as Tesla was a long time ago, Mr. Kanemaru. There's no sense reopening old wounds needlessly. The three of them share a smile, recalling the moment Yaoyorozu met with him over a year ago with the offer to be his citizen sponsor and give him a chance to change his life around. Still, you were a real jerk to my mom. Back in the day, Masahiro. Eri throws at him, giving him an annoyed look. He bursts into laughter as Yaoyorozu shoots her an angry glare while Midoriya sighs heavily with a tired smile. Yeah, I was that little Eri. And don't you let me forget it. Glad to. She calls back cheerfully. Please stop encouraging her. Yaoyorozu practically begs as her shoulders slump down. It's bad enough Katsuki and Denki fill her head with stupidity. Midoriya leans towards her, wrapping his arm around her back and grabbing her waist, pulling her into his chest. She looks at his bright smile and almost instantly cheers up. Wait, what stupidity? Drop it, 𝐬𝐽. You won't like where it leads. He calls out over his shoulder, making his wife giggle. I should head home and get ready for my first day on the job tomorrow. I'll let you guys know how it goes. Masahiro says, turning to leave. Please do. I can't wait to hear how it goes. Yaoyorozu says with a kind smile. Count on it, Mrs. Midoriya. He waves to 𝐬𝐽 before walking off, the use of that name making Midoriya slightly nervous. So, has Yutaka gotten over you having my name yet? She lets out another heavy sigh. No. He's going so far as to have 𝐬𝐽 take the Yaoyorozu name and make her the heir to his fortune. Midoriya looks at 𝐬𝐽, who shakes her head. Not gonna happen. I don't want anything to do with inheritance, big name organizations, or large amounts of money. He gives his adopted daughter a sympathetic smile before looking at his wife. Why not just take the name for business purposes? She give him a look. While at home and at 𝐬𝐽's school, you're Momo Midoriya. But with your father and his business, you're Momo Yaoyorozu. And when you're out being a badass, you're 𝐬𝐽, the everything hero. 𝐬𝐽 adds with a smirk. All right, young lady. Yaoyorozu says with a smirk, turning on her young daughter and grabbing her, tickling 𝐬𝐽 and sending them both into a giggle fit when suddenly she gasps, her hand moving to her belly. Midoriya and 𝐬𝐽 move to her side, helping the expecting mother to the fountain's ledge. She gives them a grateful smile. I'm okay, you too. All the excitement just riled him up is all. She gives Midoriya a cheeky smile. Your son just kicked me. That's what you get for spending so much time with guys like Masahiro and Kaken. She responds with an unamused stare. You're going to pay for that one, Dad. 𝐬𝐽 comments, side-eyeing him. Yeah, I know. He replies with a defeated smile. The sound of shattering glass catches their attention as a villain lands on the street outside a jewelry store. He goes pale upon seeing Midoriya and Yaoyorozu, recognizing them as heroes before leaping off, using his power-type quirk. Before Midoriya could chase after him, he was pulled into a kiss by Yaoyorozu, the two sparing a moment before pulling apart, smiling warmly. Go save him, Izuku. I love you. I love you more, Momo Midoriya. With that, he turns and runs after the fleeing villain, pushing a button on his wristband that quickly expands into an armored suit modeled after his last hero costume with additions that pay homage to All Might and Yaoyorozu, the signatures of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲 proudly displayed on both his shoulders. We'll meet you at the party, Dad. 𝐬𝐽 calls out as Midoriya gives chase. She looks at her mother. Speaking of which, wanna get going? She smiles before standing up. Lead the way, miss, I gotta finish my song before we get there. She giggles as 𝐬𝐽 shots her a scowl that would give 𝗵𝘃𝗀 a run for his money. Midoriya soars through the air, the fleeing villain not once escaping his view when the sound of explosions ring through the sky, bringing a smile to the hero's face. What the hell you think you're doing to you? 𝗵𝘃𝗀 blasts past him, heading straight for the villain. He looks back over his shoulder as Midoriya gains on him. Shouldn't you be with Yamamoe and the horned brat? He says with a fierce smirk on his face. Midoriya matches it. This won't take long. He suddenly shoots past 𝗵𝘃𝗀, quickly approaching the fleeing criminal. That's my line. You damn nerd. He blasts forward until the two of them rocket at the man, the two childhood friends doing what they love side by side, confident in the knowledge that there are people waiting for them to come home. Yaoyorozu looks up at the sky with a content smile before the sounds of 𝐬𝐽 talking excitingly brings her attention to the gathered crowd of their friends from Class A, B, the teachers, and everyone else they made throughout the years. She even manages to spot Toga and Spinner among them. And to think, she says, looking at the hand that one for all shocked all those years ago while placing her other hand on her belly. This all started from a simple day out. Finn.